and by some religious groups, examples that we're giving are Muslims. And there have been attempts to outlaw the practice, and there's been a lot of stiff resistance from previous versions of the Marriage and Divorce Bill. Remember, the Marriage and Divorce Bill was outlawing polygamy. That's one of the reasons why it was also rejected. It therefore makes sense that lawmakers who are mandated by the Constitution to make laws that reflect the aspirations of the people of Uganda and women's rights activists at the moment are concerned with getting more updated and comprehensive laws on recognition of polygamy. So this particular one recognizes polygamy, but we are saying they should define it the way it should properly be defined. It should be gender neutral. Then, Clause 4, which is on civil marriages, I know that certain Muslims sometimes also pursue civil marriages. And we are noting that while a significant portion of Ugandan population identifies as Christian, there should be provisions for more than one form of monogamous marriage, particularly for individuals that do not adhere to any religion. You might wonder, but there are actually Ugandans that go to civil marriage because they don't believe in the church. And they are there, and they are many. And it was very interesting, even for me, I was quite surprised that people are that dedicated to not believing in any God. It's quite, the way life is difficult, you need something to give you hope anyway. But we are saying that civil marriages being secular must prioritize the protection of women by ensuring they remain strictly monogamous, and that we are deeply concerned that this provision undermines the sanctity of marriage. Civil marriages being potentially polygamous. We've always known civil marriages as being monogamous, not so. Plus church. If you want to have one partner, you go to a Christian something league was very annoyed at this saying. The reason why you choose one wife and walk down the aisle in church is because you want to be monogamous. And it's what the Bible preaches. So if you tell us now the law allows that even if you walk down the aisle, your husband can go and get another wife, it doesn't make sense for a lot of people. So that's something else for you to think about. Premarital counseling, it was not very contentious. We are just saying that the government should prescribe guidelines on what is done during premarital counseling. And it's because we would like as much as possible to there be inclusion of issues that affect married partners. As FIDA were actually recommending to the committee that if they would like to consult on what usually happens in premarital counseling, I think they can get it. The church does premarital counseling, but I don't think the church speaks about everything that affects people in the marriage, because the church has a mandate of issues they talk about. But there are many, many other issues that I think we can do in premarital counseling. For instance, we are saying it's important that as people get counseled before they marry, they speak about their things. Ninaya kataka kange zirowe kange, bakandekera tata wange. Well, I have a house there that we are going to move in. It's where we shall be living. You know, those are conversations we should be having. But we never have this conversation. No one wants to talk about anything they have at that moment. And yet we've had matters where a couple marries and after a week, one of them dies, God forbid, and you're left in utmost confusion because as Ugandans, as Africans, as a people, we don't want to talk about things that are not going well, even when we know they may not go well in the near future. So we are also saying there should be a prescribed line of issues to guide the premarital counseling. I have very little time left. It speaks about marriage in Ugandan embassies, high commissions and consulates. That was not very contentious, but we are just saying that, and why I was encouraging us to register with URSB. Our marriage certificate in Uganda, as we are right now, is not recognized outside the country at some high commissions unless you've registered with URSB. So if you want your marriage to be recognized, your certificate to even be used as evidence in any matter outside Uganda, you must have registered with URSB. For anyone that might be wondering, why should I register? Yes, sir. After, eh? Okay, please. Also, we are saying that issues of jurisdiction. You know, polygamy is not allowed in most European countries. and American, and the US. Most of those countries, it's not allowed. But here in this Uganda, it is allowed. So what happens then if you move with your polygamous family to that other country? Will Uganda still recognize you as a marriage? Because it's not recognized outside Uganda. So will Uganda provide a certificate to show that this person is married, but in a polygamous marriage? What happens? That's also something for us to think about. Marriage certificates, I've just spoken about that. Ladies and gentlemen, get certificates. It seems like a small thing until when you're fighting a legal battle in this country. Then you will see that the things are not really as small as we thought. I've spoken about conversion of marriage, that it can be polygamy and it becomes monogamy. But it can be monogamous at the start, and one of the parties decides, actually not one, the man decides for it to be. It is what the bill is saying, that the man can go ahead and, make it polygamous. So that's also something. Voidable marriages, that wasn't very contentious, but I'll leave the paper with Hamida for us to read it. Types of matrimonial property, this is something for us to think about as a Muslim community, especially because, and I don't like this line of thought, but it is what it is. It's the reality. That usually there is an assumption that as a Muslim man, when you take on more than one wife, you have the capacity. But I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, most Muslim cases that we get, succession, or maybe you're sitting in a mediation to get powers of attorney, rarely do these men have the resources to take care of the children. I'm saying this in this space to ask that maybe Muslim Center to do a bit of awareness about that too. That as we say you have a right to have more than one partner, we are struggling in mediations where it's a Muslim family. Usually there are like 20 children, there are 3 wives, there is another one that they did not know about. This man has one home, a house with 2 bedrooms, and a small farm. Where will children go to school? I know the Muslim community has been doing a lot of awareness, promoting that Muslim families should take children to school. So much so that was actually the growth of Muslim education in this country, Muslim-based schools. We cannot educate kids if you have 20 and you have no resources. So as Muslim men and women, we need to reflect. Are we taking on wives we are able to afford? Or are we only practicing parts of Islam that favor us? That's for us to think about. So for matrimonial property, that's it. Equal access, it wasn't very contentious. I talked about liabilities, that is in Article 51, incurred before marriage. And we are proposing that this clause ought to clearly state that when property becomes matrimonial property, it should only become a liability of both parties if there was express agreement by both parties. Whichever party that incurred this liability should be charged with the responsibility of informing the other party about that liability, which I think is the fair way to do things. Not so. I should expressly say, yes, Mr. Moses, so and so, we are marrying, I have a loan in Post Bank. Even him, he says I have a mortgage. Then we write and agree. Because mortgages are serious business. It's a signed contract between the individual and the bank. So even you as a husband or a wife, if you agree to take up that liability, it should be written. I'm not saying that it should expressly be written all the time, because we also know that in marriages, rarely, many of us do we write anything. Even partnership deeds we don't want. I had sometime a gentleman saying, now if we enter those things of signing partnership deeds, have marriages now become contracts? But when you're divorcing, you people behave like you are contracting parties. So why don't you then be able to protect marriages better for both of you, as individuals, but also as parties together? So we are proposing that whoever took the loan has the responsibility of informing the other party. And the bill should not expressly say that if I marry this man, if this woman gets married to this man, what their liability is then becomes the liability of the couple. I think that's unfair. And we all know, I'm not accusing, you don't give me the answer, but how many of you men tell your wives when you're getting loans? be honest with yourselves. There are some balloons you get, you don't talk. And it's because you're going to do something you know your wife will not like. And you don't want to kuwa mateka because you are the man of the home. But two became one, not so. So if two are one, shouldn't both of you advise each other? The wife advises you, the husband advises. But many of us claim to have become one and that we are in equal marriages, but it's really not. We have seen many cases that involve mortgages where it's usually the man who either forged the signature of the wife to get consent or had a mortgage before this marriage and did not talk. Someone gets a mortgage to build a house for the second wife. That's not business you want your first wife to know. So you will not tell her. Should that be my liability also? I think not. So we are proposing that there should be explicit agreeing that I'm taking up this liability from this woman or that we are sharing the liability. The last one, and this one is also an example, our recommendation comes from a line of cases that we have handled. Maintenance to cease on remarriage, that is under clause 83. So clause 83 says that maintenance of either parties will cease when there is remarriage. What does this mean? That if Elizabeth is married to him and we separate and I enter another marriage or he enters another marriage, whichever party had the responsibility of maintaining whatever needed to be maintained, it will stop. And we are saying, however, that the bill needs to explicitly provide for instances where maintenance shall cease upon remarriage of the spouse. That it should also clearly state that this shall not affect maintenance of children born of that marriage. We are continuing to say that through our different legal aid clinics, we have observed. These are true stories, ladies and gentlemen. Usually when a couple is separating, and while they may have their issues, they are not violent. They've just come for guidance through the process so that there is fairness. Usually, when the man, let me say you call him for the third, maybe you're reviewing, because what we usually do, if two are separating, we've signed a memorandum, we agree. He says, maybe me, I'll pay fees for two of the children. The wife says, I'll pay fees for the last born. Then he says, I'll contribute to rent where my children live, like this, like that. We agree. So we write it all down, they sign, agree, register it. Sometimes they disagree, we continue to court and have a whole divorce petition and we continue. However, one of the challenges we face with such memorandums of understanding is when the husband, let me say one of those days, you call them for mediation and he hears, or usually many of them will claim, I even heard she has another man. He will stop paying fees. He'll stop taking care of the children. Many of them. They'll say, let that other man take care. But they're your children. So what do you want the other man to do with them? You get? So we are saying that ceasing should be to the wife or husband. But the bill should clearly state that the man or the woman who has remarried will continue taking care of the kids till they are adults. That's the age of 18. It usually plays me. Their clients want to ask, why do you want the other new man to take care of you? He has taken the wife. Let him take the whole burden. You're now calling your children burdens. Gentlemen, we have to honestly step up. What is happening in our legal aid clinics is very worrying. As I close, ladies and gentlemen, as you might have heard, except for describing the nature of marriages, how the marriages should go, and I hope you have the opportunity to look at the bill. I even have it. I'll also share it with Hamida, the latest version that we got from the committee. You will see there is very little referencing to Muslim communities. There is only guidance in recognition of Muslim marriages and the processes, because you already have a law that speaks about that. However, which brings me to, I think, what my sister Lena will speak about. We are also supposed to be having a Cadicots bill, which is supposed to be dealing with some of these issues that I've talked about for Christian families or marriages. Issues of custody, maintenance, divorce, marriage. The Quran guides and these courts are supposed to follow. However, in this country of ours, these courts are not operationalized. So what happens? I'll stop there, ladies and gentlemen, for any comments before I hand the mic either to Hamida or for the conversation that Lena will be having. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Side and the cultural eldership side. Thank you for a very stimulating discourse. And thank you, MCJL. These conversations are few and far between. I wish we had more of these. My sister answered my question with her last remark that if Kadhi courts were to be operationalized, some of these questions would reduce. And my concern goes to the organizers of these conversations. Issues of marriage, divorce, I even want to say death, but I also want to say funerals and child naming have been hijacked by the religious actors when actually they are cultural and traditional issues. So while we are having this very important discussion, I don't see the cultural and traditional space players or advocates, unless I'm confused, but from the way we introduced ourselves, traditional and royals to see about global African nation, Pan-Africanism and so on. It's a lot of category there, but it is not why I'm here. I'm talking about deficiencies in the law on how to address the complications of our relationships when it comes to producing the next generation in bed. So, in short, I'm saying, sir, we have cultural elders organizations. Maybe you should have called somebody from the Buganda Kingdom or the other cultural institutions around to be a part of this interesting dialogue. Who knows what input they would have made. Secondly, I don't know why family building and let me call it marriage has become big business, such that it is being negotiated in a very cutthroat manner. Like you enter a marriage like you're entering war. Culturally speaking, I think we as cultural elders need to do more work to bring back sanity into the choices and the decisions to start a family, maintain one, until circumstances bring in the lawyers. I hope they never get in there. As I put down this mic, I want to say something unfortunate. One of my high school brothers passed away. His vehicle entered a trailer and he died. So our high school alumni went together and sat with the widow, and we definitely found situations. The mother-in-law trying to strangle the woman, the other brothers saying this friend of mine we went to school with was an only child of his mother in that relationship. And the mother never married in that relationship. But at the end of the day, this boy became the heir of that family. So there was a lot of katogo there. Now, interestingly, we had very many land friends within my group, including a judge. And this is what the judge said. Whatever happens, don't go to court to address this issue. You will never save anything from this estate. That was a judge speaking. So, while we are also working to make adequate use of the law to foster harmony and continuity, we should also go back to make that law not a jungle, a wild space where we go to lose ourselves and hate ourselves and separate ourselves. Finally, this activity has been run in a marathon way. There is today, there is tomorrow, there is the other day, and there is handing it to whoever is supposed to be making sense of it. But I feel this conversation should continue almost for another 6 months. I know we are time barred by courts closing and parliament closing and whatever, and the elections coming in. But I am saying, in Uganda, with our 60 or so cultural communities, MCJL and other actors should also be running into the culture spaces to get the actual knowledge, because my sister here has been misunderstanding some of these things. That when does a girl's family pay something to the young man? Trust me, when you marry, the bigger burden is carried by the girl's family. Without you knowing and without it being admitted, she brings the basket, she brings the mat, she brings the bed sheets, she brings most of the technology that you require to make a very good home. And then they keep also sending the food they grow. So, no, you cannot ask that. What does the girl's family do for the boy? You bring all the things to the girl's family, they bring it all right back. And a lot of other things. So I will end this by thanking for the opportunity for this conversation, and also request that this conversation be taken out into the actual spaces where the answers are. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I have two concerns to share. The first one is that you really cited that according to the way you have assessed this, and also the way Papa has put it, I think that maybe the little we may see possibly before Parliament closes business will be the second reading. And all of us, I think, are on social media, and recently we are seeing again some new issue being posted that the Uganda Human Rights Commission has declared that, has clarified that adultery is no longer a criminal. And I feel that that will also add on into this. I didn't see it come here clearly, but I would love to hear from you whether Human Rights Commission has the powers to declare this kind of things here. Then the other, you put it clearly that the religious institutions be given the mandate to really ensure that marriages are registered. And my only concern is that that we also need to look forward to a way of streamlining the fees being charged by the religious institutions for their certificates, now with the inclusion of the registration fee. Otherwise, I think as it stands, I think every church has every faith institution has different figures they levy. And I also know that even in the background of Church of Uganda, the Anglican faith, I think every diocese can decides on what they charge. And I think this may really put a burden on our local communities. And I am talking for someone deep in Kumi district where I come from. So maybe if that is streamlined, this could really see us move forward. Thank you.
Right from the onset, when you started, you said this law or this bill has taken years, decades, let me call it like that. And I would say each time this law is taken to the shelves. And each time when people pick interest, they pick it and bring it. And so I want to ask this aloud because I was asking myself a question. Is this government interested in this law? We've seen the law recently, the UPDF Act. You know how long it took in Parliament to be approved. And before you realize, I think yesterday is when I saw on social media that the president has assented to it. So now it is a law. So that is why I was asking myself, is government really interested in this law? If it is interested, why has it stalled? If it is not interested, how will the CSOs push a pressure to make the government have interest in this law? How prepared are we? What efforts are we going to put? Otherwise, I am worried that we will struggle and write a position paper, and at the end of the day, we will have done just the programming and say, yes, we have achieved. Right as Amida, is it Amida? Was showing the outputs there and the outcomes, and we write a report. Yes, we wrote and we came up with a position paper. We presented that. At the end of it all, it has gone to the shelves. So I really don't know how best. Probably in your own analysis as FIDA, through your experience for the many years, lucky enough you were a student, studied the same thing, and now coming to advocate for the same thing. How best can we interest government to take up this law and make it a law? Based on what we have seen. The second thing for me is, you made reference to the faith books, that is to the Bible and the Quran. And I was asking myself, the Constitution of Uganda, I think, came when I was already old. Let me call it 1995.
The consultation. Maybe lastly is about the marriage gift. I don't know whether this is now different from the bride price, because for you, the people you call yourself land people, you keep on confusing people. Because if it is payment, if it involves money, if it involves exchange of good for good, then it is not a gift. Why must we hide under the pretense of a gift and then you say marriage gift? Because even before the advent of money and currency, there was barter trade. And before this money came into power, even marriage was conducted in that context. And then now you want to run away and say it is a gift which is stipulated that you must do this. That does not become a gift anymore. Finally, I want to thank FIDA in line of the pursuit for these policies and these laws. I think this is an area that FIDA has been doing and might seem to be doing well. But on a sad note, on the ground, many men continue to suffer in the hands of FIDA, because the assumption is that whatever man is brought before FIDA is already a perpetrator. And this is not good on the ground. On the ground, men are complaining, men are suffering. I happened to accompany a friend to FIDA with several accusations. And after the man spoke, the woman started crying. And that is how it ended. And Fida again became very bitter on the woman and said, why did you lie to us? Why did you do this? So this issue of this assumption that every man brought to Fida is a perpetrator, I think you need to begin to move away from that. Thank you.
I was very happy for the presentation because it touched many things which for me, like, some of them were like personal. I felt like you were looking through into my family life. Yeah, it tickled me. So, like the issue of borrowing loan without involving a woman, but I wanted to say that issue of marriage involves love. And to understand love between two people, it is only those two people who can understand it. The lawyers can come in to try to understand issues, but honestly, for me, I feel like it is the two people who can be able to explain their love relationship. That's what I wanted to say. And then secondly, I think the law tries to generalize things, especially in terms of look at context. The context in which two people get married may not be the same. We have very many tribes and cultures in Uganda, but I think the law tries to assume that these things are the same, and in that way it causes more confusion. So I feel that there should be a separate section that tries to talk about context differently. The context in Baganda is not the context in our place in West Nile, not the same in Karamoja, not the same in... So that should be considered. And also I want to conclude by saying that many marriages are together not because of even love, but because of condition. Some people have come together, they live together, a man and a woman live together, not because there was love in the beginning, but because there is a condition that forced them to start living together. For example, maybe a girl got pregnant, and because of the fear of the parents, said, okay, I'm coming to you. And they are staying together, but not because the man loved the girl, but because of the condition. So all those things are really bringing complications, but also I feel with awareness, it is causing more problems. People are now aware and more problems are coming because of the bill, because of these issues. So the more awareness we create, the more problems we are going to to get. Yeah, thank you.
Get awareness in the society so that a boy and a girl child should know his or her responsibilities and rights before going into marriage. Because some of the problems are coming in marriage when someone doesn't fulfill his or her responsibilities or knowing his or her rights. I think I'm clear.
The last one, then
Opportunity. Just brief reflection about the presentation that has been made. I was trying to reflect that Uganda being a diverse country in terms of religion, in terms of the tribes, the different tribes, and that is how we have been built as a country. But also with the provision that Uganda is a secular country that does not recognize any particular religion, but everyone having the freedom to take on any religion of their you know, which is best for them probably. So I think that the diversity of Uganda, especially where we come from, must be recognized in the bill. But also when it comes to polygamy or monogamy, I was reflecting, and I think it is a double-edged sword. Reason being, as a wife right now, I wouldn't love my husband to marry a second woman. But at the same time, the reality is, if it wasn't polygamy,
some of us wouldn't perhaps have been into existence because our mothers were not even the second or even the third wife. So I think that also has to be recognized. But also looking at the trends today, young people are, marriage is no longer something which is for sure cherished. And it is unfortunate. It is something that we should brag about. And just to report that today young people are living marriages as if they are competing for trophies. But at the same time, you cannot blame it on them. Probably the conditions in there make even the situation worse. But apart from that, given the fact that now the world is becoming more capitalistic and everyone is looking how to survive within the current trend, I'm worried that we are heading into a future of loneliness, a future of uncertainty, a future of living out the key fabrics that have put together the family. But at the same time, I've seen women walking out of marriage after 25 years with literally nothing. So that is why I'm so indecisive. I don't know where to, but probably at the end of this conversation, I will have a broader picture and a stand of what I stand for in this bill. Thank you.
Muslim Center that are doing the pushing to make sure that the final product after all these many years reflects the lived realities of many Ugandans. Law and faith, I'd like to implore us to be, I usually tell people to be honest with ourselves first as we think about other people. When you're speaking about issues of family, marriage, and relationships, culture, faith, those are things that are personal to everybody. That people that are Muslims really like their religion. People that are Christians, they're really, it's a thing that is part of us, and so is our culture as Ugandans, as Africans. However, unfortunately, we are a country that is running on common law, and therefore we have laws that govern us, right? And therefore, what is in practice in terms of religion and culture should align to these approved international, regional, and national principles. Because the law in itself is meant to be a tool to protect citizens, a tool for citizens to use to aggravate, to agitate for their rights, right? Though we've seen laws that sometimes get passed and they are perpetuating things that are not good. However, the law is meant to have a fusion of all those. And that is why it provides for freedom for association, religion. That's why you can never see the police saying that, you see, this church should close because for it has a fake pastor. For you, who told you it's a fake pastor? Because these things are spiritual to people. For them, maybe the Holy Spirit has showed them that that is their pastor of their choice. So that's why you see there is that freedom. Even when we know right now that there is religious manipulation, not so. And that's a very difficult subject to have. At a personal level, for me, I struggle to discuss religious abuse right now because we believe religion comes with miracles, with relationship with God, with a special, unique thing that may not make human sense sometimes. And therefore, when you ask questions, you're either going to get accused of being unreligious or trying not to go to heaven. So, and since I'm trying to go to heaven, that's a subject that sometimes I may avoid. But it's something we need to open our eyes to. There is indeed religious manipulation, and people are getting manipulated every day. The Sexual Offences Bill, if you've picked interest, is trying to propose legislation of also, you see, the relationship, the fiduciary duty that religious leaders have. Because we know religious leaders these days that say you bring your person, we pray for them, and they defile children, and they rape women. You've seen some that suckle breasts of women that they are blessing them. Some that burn down churches. So the law ought to align, unfortunately, with faith, religious practices, and culture ought to align with human rights or with the law, unfortunately. And most of the things, sometimes, not most, sometimes, a lot of the practices that are either cultural or religious, sometimes may only fit a certain group of people. And we'll be honest, what Muslims do in their places of worship is not the same as what Catholics do. And the law may not be able to concretely gather all that and put it in one law book. What the Hindus do, what Baha'i does, but there is an international standard that they follow. So unfortunately, that may not be possible. Registration of divorce, yes, there's registration of divorce. Any of the parties can petition for divorce. Divorce in Uganda is through the court system, where you get a decree nisi, the final, that's the preliminary order for divorce. The final one, you can do this through the magistrate's court or the high court if it involves a national that is not a Ugandan national. But yes, divorces are also registered through the court system. Feedback on FIDA. Thank you so much for the feedback. This is something that's not new to me. I've heard it before about what's happening on ground. And we are being called anti-men. We don't like men. We don't like marriage. And all those things are not true. If you've interacted with me or anyone from FIDA, you will see that our work is meant to ensure that families are protected. We encourage people to come for counseling before divorce. You people don't come. You come when your husband has brought a panga in the house to chase you. So there is not much we can do. But what we do before that happens is currently we are running 21 legal aid clinics in 21 districts. So through those districts, we do a lot of awareness on marriage, divorce, cohabitation, marital property, domestic violence, and all those things. So we really hope that from also people like you who come for such engagements, who interface with FIDA, to take back the message that please don't be afraid. Like the example he has given, that it was later found the woman was lying. That's why they thought, that's the woman started to cry later when it was found that she was lying. We are not God, but we are lawyers, and therefore we use evidence presented to work on these matters. And unfortunately, many times when men come to FIDA, unfortunately, the things that they are saying about them are either true or half truths. So we work with evidence presented to usually handle matters. We are alive to the fact that not all clients that come to FIDA come with full truths. Just like also you will go to a counselor sometimes with not full truths. So we work on evidence that's been promoted. We are creating a lot of awareness about this bill. Last month, in Women's Month in March, we were, for example, in the market. Because we usually think, well, women and men who work in the informal sector usually get affected by these issues. Not many of them come to these hotels, to these meetings. So we are doing a lot of community awareness. We are in actually quarters, doing public debates, asking the community, what do you think about this? So I know that Muslim Center also does a lot of outreach. That's an area where we could collaborate with FIDA to go to Muslim-centric communities to spread this message on this. But we are doing a lot of radio talk shows, sport messages, through community legal volunteers, through collaboration with institutions like Muslim Center that have interest in the same work that we are doing. But I must confess, it's been a very challenging journey because there is a lot of resistance from different groups on different clauses. Where one group agrees on the clause on non-conversion of marriages, they don't agree to something else, and therefore it's caused a bit of slowness in response. But that's what I can say in regards to the comments.
Thank you so much, Hamida. And thank you so much, Elizabeth. My name is Nagawa Hajar. I work with Muslim Center for Justice and Law. Some of you are seeing me for the first time, others we've interacted before. I'm new in the organization, though not very new. I was there before. So our next session is a presentation on status of the legal aid bill in Uganda. And it's going to be presented by Mr. Kayanja Dennis Drake from LabsNet. You're welcome, sir.
Yes, it's usually very challenging to present after powerful people like Kemigesha has presented. And actually, when I saw that she was going to present before me, I was threatened. I've been one of the sole beneficiaries of her beautiful presentations over time. And I think you will agree with me that given her passion in these fields of women justice, I think we should encourage her to stand for woman MP. she might have some very good impact in Parliament. I also had a few reactions that I wanted to make in regards to her presentation, but when I saw that the marrieds were submitting first, I said, me the unmarried, I will come in later. I wanted to be sure that my reactions are not rendered irrelevant. Yeah, but before I start my presentation, and as she's helping out, I had maybe just a few reactions in regards to her presentation, and maybe a few takeaways that Kemi could go back with to feed her. My little understanding of marriage, of course I'm not yet married like I said, but I'm a potential candidate, and I'm aspiring soon because there is someone's daughter that I've been disturbing in the recent past. But my understanding is that issues of marriage are hinged on culture and religion, right? And I loved it when my sister emphasized that civil marriages should not be polygamous, because at the time when I enter the marriage, or when she enters the marriage, she expects it to be monogamous, right? And my encouragement to her is that let there not be double standards, because I will assume that there is the reason as to why she's emphasizing that is fetched from the biblical guidance that Christian marriages are potentially monogamous, right? But also Christian marriages discourage divorce. And FIDA is very well known for having divorce lawyers. So I think maybe we also need to emphasize and encourage that people should try and be there, because our mothers were there. And where it fails, if we are to choose to opt for free will, if you can take the free will to divorce, then I can also take the free will to be polygamous. Of course, the words shouldn't be used against me. Then my last emphasis would be on the question of bride price. This is a discussion that I've been having with many of my peers for quite a long time. That many of the issues that we are having in marriages as society evolves, there are cultural practices that we are still holding on to that are causing a lot of havoc in things or institutions like marriage. We all know the old saying that to whom much is given, much is expected. When she was mentioning her list of functions that as a man I have to take before I have someone's daughter living with me in my house, she forgot to mention a proposal. Nowadays there is a new trend of proposals which are also expected to be pompous. So as a man I have to make a proposal, I do a kuchala shower, right? Yes. And then after I do a kuchala, which is also very exaggerated. Then we do an introduction, shower, and then an introduction. All those are facilitated by the man. And then when you go for the introduction, you're expected to go with all these many things that, you know, you need to impress the girl's family. Of course, like she said, some are gifts, but in reality they are not gifts. Some will just say it to just see how far your understanding can take you, that for you, you just want to take their daughter on a mere Bible. They'll tell you, bring for us a Bible. Then they'll wait to see what other things do you bring, just to see. Then after you have to wed. So with all that, I think maybe, Kemi, you need to go with that if we are maybe to try and harmonize the peace in the marriage, and if you want to reduce these levels of control that men tend to have over women, because the truth is we struggle to do these things. And like you stated, sometimes we eat loans to facilitate some of these events, to make you happy. Then 6 months down the road, you're speaking English that I don't understand. So it could be one of the reasons behind those issues. But I think maybe also the person who wrote the book of Revelations forgot to include that one of the symptoms that will be looked at that will justify the end of this world could be breakdown in marriages, because they are also very worrying lately, the rate at which they are breaking down. Anyway, my name is Kayanja Dennis Drake, and I work with the Legal Aid Service Providers Network. I serve as the in-house counsel. There are quite some new faces, but at least I've seen also quite some many within the room. And purposely, my presentation will be on the status of the National Legal Aid Bill. When we received the invitation from MCJL, the big question was, but I think people already know the status of the National Legal Aid Bill, where it is. Because unlike the marriage bill, we've not yet gone into the stage of discussing the different contents of the bill. For us, we are way still far at the preliminary stages since 2012. But nevertheless, we try to put up something that maybe could have be of benefit to the colleagues in the room that I'm going to share. Are we together? Yes. You know, in my other things that I do away from being a lawyer, I happen to be a teacher. Unfortunately, I'm a teacher of a primary school. But one of the things that they told me when I started doing education, they told me that if you're teaching students and you see certain mannerisms, it could mean that they are not paying attention to you, or they are paying too much attention to you that you should be speaking very fast. I don't know where I am right now. I wanted to give some little bit of context to why we have been for quite some time been struggling to emphasize the importance of the enactment of the National Legal Aid Bill. Let me use you as an example. I think we've met before actually. Kindly remind me of your name. Ignatius, yes. If my brother here, Ignatius, is accused of having stolen a mobile phone, the first thing that they do is to take him to police, right? They make him write a statement with all the policemen there. You know how threatening they can be. Then investigations begin, right? Who conducts the investigations? Police, right? Then, when investigations are somewhere to be concluded, the file will be forwarded to the state attorney, which will be sanctioned. State attorney, served by the state, right? When you appear before court, with court has over, I think on average, the court premises alone, the machinery against you will be of like 4 people. The state attorney, the court orderly, the magistrate, and the clerk. All those are paid by government, right? And when he takes plea, he'll be taken to Kampala Remand Prison. Yes? All that is government machinery being unleashed against him. Now, recently we've conducted surveys and researches where we have concluded that most of the people who are usually accused of certain crimes are usually poor people. Because, for example, what is the possibility? Of course, circumstances are very rare, but let me give an example. Of course, I'm not poor, though I'm not rich, but what is the possibility that my senior brother there would rape a woman? What are the chances? Because ordinarily, he can afford to take a woman out on a what? On a date. Are we together? He can afford to entice 1, 2, 3, 4 women. Actually, it is because of people like him that the Kemis are fighting polygamy. Because he can afford to have as many as he wishes. But now it is the poor man who even fears to face a lady like this sister of mine, who will want to use an unlikely chance to wait for her maybe as she's going back home, and then he chooses to. Are we together? So what does that mean? That if an individual has all this state machinery unleashed against them, then what is left for him? You have police, you have ODPP, you have all the court and all the court actors against you, and then you have prisons. Then there is you, many of whom don't even know how to speak English. Meanwhile, the categories that we are talking about are the majority of Ugandans. Are we together? So, it is from that we are emphasizing how much we need, not want, how much we need the National Legal Aid Bill. I usually compare legal services to medical services. I think sometimes in these jobs that we do, we also need to add legal insurance on top of the different benefits that they keep giving us. Reason being, just like health, if something happened to you legally, it is capable of affecting your life forever. Just like how at your workplace they might want to give you medical insurance because maybe on a fateful day where I work from, we had an unfortunate circumstance where one of our drivers was electrocuted when he was trying to put up those teardrops and he had quite a good compensation in regards to the health benefit. Now I'm asking the same question. In certain situations where you are accused of a crime, some of these issues actually even happen in workplaces. A girl X will wake up, maybe you've had issues with her, then she'll say you're harassing her sexually. And we know how sometimes society is easy to be compassionate towards the girl child as opposed to the boy child. So, just like medical services, if I have a legal issue, it's very capable of affecting my entire life. Assuming someone wakes up and they accuse me of having raped their daughter. Meanwhile, we are in a country where we are still operating on the system of trial by criminal sessions. Of course, I'm alive to the fact that we have people on state brief. But I have a client in Chitalia Minimax who has been on pre-trial for 5 years. His trial has never commenced. So, speak of affecting someone's life forever. 2, they accused my brother Ignatius of having stolen a phone. Who will respect him again at the village where he comes from, or maybe even his peers that he works with? Some of these circumstances can even force you to resign your job. So, I personally believe that legal aid services or legal services are of equal importance. I was among the people who were very defiant when they said that lawyers are not essential workers. Yet it was in that time when they used to arrest most of our clients, and they would leave them away from they would take them away from their families. Anyway, by way of contextual background, we highlighted that legal aid is a critical component of enhancing access to justice. And the reason that I gave was in regards to my background, where I said that if you have all this state machinery against you, some of these people actually go to court for the first time and they don't even know what to say. So, if you want to access justice but you don't even know how to access it and you don't have anyone to help you access it, then what happens? 2, there was a survey, a needs survey that was conducted by HIL, that is the Hague Institutions of Innovations and Law, in 2024, where they concluded that 95% of the population have at least experienced a legal problem. Meanwhile, there are people here in the room that don't even know that they've ever experienced a legal problem. I know there are colleagues here in the room that if I asked my sister, have you ever used the services of a lawyer? Maybe you could be a lawyer yourself. But I know that even in this very room, there are people who have never used the services of a lawyer. But not because they didn't want the lawyer. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. But some didn't even know that they needed services of a lawyer. The village where I come from, where I stay, I usually ask the mothers who keep complaining about the fathers of their children, that did you know that the father of your children is committing a very big offense by not providing for maintenance for those children? They don't know. For them, they think that when you separate with a man, the separation is regarded as the most important thing as opposed to the upbringing of the children. And therefore, if the man or the woman, as the context may dictate, if they choose to go on with another person, then the dynamics and the discussion, you tend to listen to what they're trying to discuss, and for them what they're holding on to the most is the relationship, which might even not be recovered. So some people don't even know that they need legal services, yet they actually do. So 95% of Ugandans have at least experienced a legal problem, but a small fraction of them is able to get a lawyer because they say lawyers are very pricey. Then 2, we also highlighted that the provision of legal aid is anchored in our Constitution under Article 21 and Article 28. We also emphasized the Judicature Act Cap 16 and the Advocates Act, although for some of these acts now, we the practicing advocates are at least required to give pro bono services. But as we speak now, I think we are about 4,000 advocates in Uganda. Yes? Now, try to tally that with the need, because I think right now we are about 42 million Ugandans, 45 million Ugandans. So 45 million Ugandans vis-a-vis 4,000 advocates, and each advocate is merely required to handle one pro bono case. You get what I'm saying? Now, we also looked at the justification why we need a state-funded legal aid scheme. You'll agree with me that we have currently organizations or institutions that offer legal aid in Uganda, but we know of how much they are struggling, included but not limited to ours. My sister Kemi there will tell you that at FIDA, they are struggling. Cases are too many. And of course, they are having also their internal systems of how they are trying to manage the numbers vis-a-vis the human resource. But the cases are too many for them to handle. And then we end up confusing ourselves through the means and merits tests because we are trying to minimize and manage numbers. Yes? So, legal aid is a human right, and it is guaranteed under international instruments, including the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. I know sometimes some people don't like it when we mention these international instruments because they find them too foreign and too English. Actually, some even get bored when you start mentioning them. But it's because there is a standard to life, right? And a standard to which society needs to operate, and standardization. That's why we have some of these instruments in place. And then during the UPR review of 2016, Uganda accepted the recommendation to expedite the enactment of the National Legal Aid Law, owing to its importance in regards to enhancing justice for all. We also highlighted the fact that in East Africa, or in the East African region, Uganda is that one state that is lagging behind in regards to this. We also highlighted that notwithstanding the above, the bulk of legal aid service provision in Uganda is offered by non-state actors, what we call the LASPs, or the legal aid service providers. And this is supported by donors. I will not go into the discussion of the shrinking civic space because I think there is a slot for that. And because of the dwindling funding, this has been negatively impacted. And therefore, to ensure sustainable legal aid service provision, LASPNet has been at the forefront of advocating for the enactment of the National Legal Aid Law since 2012. And this law aims to create a harmonized and sustainable legal aid system, imposing a clear obligation on the state to provide legal aid services to indigent persons. Although sometimes the question of indigence is subjective or objective, as the case may be, but I think in one way or the other, me or you or a relative is capable of being indigent. Let me give an example. Assuming I gave my sister to my brother here, a very rich man in Kampala, owning multiple businesses, and unfortunately, he loses a life. Are we together? But that sister of mine who was married to him was a housewife, and as that, she was not working. Almost all the businesses and all the projects that were owned by him were all in his names. Are we together? The question is, would you consider that sister of mine to be a capable Ugandan to pay for legal services in the event that we are seeking or applying for letters of administration? I don't even know if my question is clear. You get what I'm saying? At some point, you can have it all together, right? And you think maybe these things may not reach me. And like I said, we don't have legal insurance. Yes? So in the event that maybe you've had it all and you're no longer able to have it all, what happens to you if you do not afford a lawyer? Those are some of the circumstances where you find cases like the one Haji mentioned, where relatives of the deceased come and they want to treat the woman or the wife like she meant nothing at all. Yet in actual sense, I'm among those people who, I think when I also have an opportunity to go to parliament, I will advocate for the increment of that percentage in the Succession Act that goes to the spouse. Because to me, it does not make logical sense that I will have struggled with my wife to put together everything that we have, directly and indirectly, including those children who are beneficiaries. Are we together? And then you have her taking that percentage? I'm among the people who disagree. So, in my honest opinion, I think that even if at some point you have had a privilege of being able to meet certain things, there can come a time where you're also considered indigent. Are we together? So, and it is because of reasons like those ones that we are advocating for the enactment of the National Legal Aid Bill. And what does that bill seek, briefly? It seeks to impose a statutory obligation on government to provide legal aid services to the indigent and the vulnerable. Because, like I said, each of us is a potential candidate of being taken to court or desiring to take someone to court. Then to expanding the definition of legal aid to go beyond mere legal representation, but also include legal advice and assistance. I stated earlier and I said that there are many of us here who have had a legal problem at some point, but you didn't know that you had a legal problem and that you needed services of a lawyer. But also to include issues of alternative dispute resolution. Many of these issues that arise, when Haji mentioned that the judge encouraged them not to go to court, it was because usually when you go to court, we shall look at the law, as the law says and as the law is. And yet sometimes, or in very many occasions, the law will seem to be unfair in certain complex situations. Are we together? And also the fact that sometimes these courts can mean to take forever. Are we together? Yes, so if you can sit and agree as a family and have certain issues sorted out, and actually lately in the new dispensation of justice, there are so much encouraging issues of alternative dispute resolution. Are we together? But the question is, who offers that alternative dispute resolution? Because courts are overwhelmed with whatever that is going on. And many of them, sometimes you have people like court-annexed mediators who mediate over matters purposely to finish, such that they can draft reports, but they don't give adequate time to the people who desire the mediation. So we also seek to expand that definition, then establish a government unit or agency tasked with managing and coordinating legal aid and service delivery. There have been quite a number of discussions around this bill. There have been questions of who takes the lead. Of course, you've had quite a number of discussions and reactions from the Land Attorney General and his opinion on the bill, which I'll not go into because he might have a relative in the room and I'm taken. But at least we know that for him, he believes that we don't actually need this bill because there are already government institutions that are offering legal aid, like LDC, like justice centers, but which we know that aren't sufficient. And even himself, among the questions he raised, he was like, okay, if then it is to be hosted, who will host it? Because it might now end up rendering these already existing government institutions to be useless. Of course, there were discussions on whether it could be hosted by the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Then some were asking, why not Law Council? Since Law Council is the one that takes on all the advocates. So, there have been quite a number of questions, but this bill also entails that establishing which unit will be responsible for offering this legal aid. Then outlining the eligibility criteria and procedures for accessing legal aid. Of course, we know many of us here who have offered legal aid, we've fallen victims of people who masquerade as indigent when they are not indigent. Someone comes, that day they choose their clothes that they usually use for the farm, and they come and manipulate as indigent, and they end up wasting resources that maybe would have been allocated to someone more deserving. Then it also intends to settle minimum standards and regulatory framework for public and non-state legal aid providers to ensure accountability, consistency, and quality of service. This one is a fact. The truth is, many of us who offer legal aid have always been questioned on the quality of the legal aid services that we offer. I think in these courts, many of those judicial officers, especially up country, if they get to know that you're from a legal aid service provider institution, they don't even bother asking if you have a practicing certificate. As long as you can speak some English. That's why we are even having sometimes community paralegals masquerading as advocates. We've had issues. Kemi knows, you know. But the reality of the matter is that even us who are trying to give legal aid services, somehow our quality is wanting. It does not match up to the standard. Are we together? But do you know what causes that? One, the demand for the services is high. Are we together? So even if the judicial officer wishes to ask you for a practicing certificate, but then they know you're offering a free service, it's not paid for by the state, you're working on donor funding. Some of these were actually volunteering because they no longer have donor funding. They are volunteering. So whatever they will present and whichever efforts that they will make in making the case, the judicial officer will just let them be because they are volunteering anyway. And as a result, very many clients have lost cases because of us legal aid service providers and because of the quality of the services that we offer. Are we together? So, this bill will also help us to ensure that there is consistency and quality of service. Then, merging, updating, and reforming fragmented legal aid laws into a single comprehensive regime. I am about to finish. Yes. And we are about to go for lunch. Then, the history of this bill, as some of you could have heard, in 2022, the bill was punctuated by a series of conferences, engagements with policymakers, advocacy campaigns, benchmarking visits like the one that was made in South Africa, and even previously before that, I know very many of your institutions here were invited to participate in those advocacy campaigns. Very many of you did. In my prior presentation, I had included some of them, but it was quite lengthy and I eliminated them. And that bill was first presented on the floor of Parliament by Honorable Leandro Komakech of Gulu Municipality at the last day of sitting of the 10th Parliament. At the last day of the sitting of the 10th Parliament. Are we together? I remember that day, I was out of office, but I remember how everyone within the civil society was excited, including my very own workplace, and how excited my boss was. Not because it had been passed, but simply because it had been taken for the first reading. And my question was, have they noticed that it was on the last day of the sitting? And we know how Ugandan politics is. Maybe it could have been motivated by the fact that we were soon going into campaigns. Are we together? And it is of little or no wonder that in the 11th Parliament, among the first things, I think by then it was the Honorable Jacob Olanya, the late, may he so rest in peace. They said that all pending bills that were before the 10th Parliament were to be quashed and they had to be retabled. Now, the challenge at the time was that our mover had not been re-elected by his constituency. Now, with all the efforts and all the resources and with all the engagements that we had had previously, as long as you don't have a mover, it's like you're almost going back to square one. Are we together? Those are some of the other issues that are affecting the marriage bill. And of course, we were left with no choice but to secure another member. That was Honorable Cyrus Egon of Kumi Municipality. Now later, on 22nd November 2022, he presented the bill for the second reading. However, it was referred by the Speaker of Parliament to the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee to address concerns by the Land Attorney General. There were quite a number of concerns. I will not mention many, but the obvious ones, some of which you know. But for me and for others, as you'll agree with me, maybe I forgot to state the figure. That bill has an annual expenditure of, I think it's about 47.9 billion. Now, during the time even when we were having these discussions, we had quite a number of development partners, because one of the concerns of the Land Attorney General was that government cannot fund that. But then, you and I both know that that is not something that can be determined by the Attorney General. It is determined by the Ministry of Finance, right? Then too, he said, if we are to move around with it, at least we need external support. Meanwhile, at the time when he had said that, the European Union had unofficially already committed to funding that bill for at least the first, were they 3-5 years? Single-handedly, the European Union was willing to fund that bill, and maybe government could pick up from there, and maybe other development partners could jump on board. Later, on Valentine of 2023, the Attorney General appeared before the committee and provided his stand that government was not ready to operationalize the legal aid law. Are we together? Later, the private mover was then given an opportunity to appear before the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee on 24th February, 10 days later, where he provided a rejoinder to the AG's submission, maintaining his stand on the need to have the law enacted. Then on 23rd May 2023, this same bill was presented to the floor of Parliament for the second reading. However, the bill could not proceed from that level due to the fact that the Land Attorney General continued to convince Parliament that funding legal aid is such an expensive, I forgot to put that in bold, but you can put it in bold. It is such an expensive venture on the side of government. It was therefore referred to the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee for further handling, and up to today, that is where it is. And still, remember, we are going into another election, and no one knows then what will happen after. Of course, the Honorable Minister, Norbert Mao, has on various occasions showed interest in this bill, but the Land Attorney General has on very, very many occasions showed how uninterested he has been in this bill. Now, a call to action. We all know that the main reasons as to why this bill has been thrown under the racks is because of the considered opinion of the Land Attorney General. But if you are to sit and go through his major arguments, there are mainly three. One, I talked about the funding of the 47.9 billion annually. Two, the Land Attorney General believes that this bill is irrelevant. One, we already have institutions that are offering legal aid like LDC. Meanwhile, LDC Legal Aid Clinic operates in 3 districts, unless I'm mistaken. That is Kampala, Wakiso, Masindi, and then nowadays Lira, and they stretch to Mbale. Okay, then that makes them 4. And then that district after Arua is called what? Yumbe. Are we together? But how many districts are in Uganda? And then the justice centers. We all know that the justice centers were mainly funded by the DGF. And many of these justice centers are falling to the ground, by the way. And even themselves, they are not covering the entire country. So, that argument as well. So as we conclude, we want to encourage you. Maybe some of you have easy access to his chambers. Maybe some of you know someone who knows someone who can have access to his chambers. Because I think as at the moment the Land Attorney General is convinced of the importance of the legal aid bill, then maybe. So as we conclude, we stated that the National Legal Aid Bill of 2022, if enacted into law, will go a long way in promoting access to justice for the vulnerable and marginalized. Its multiple benefits will also include reducing legal inequality, promoting social cohesion, and empowering marginalized populations, and that the call to action should therefore be directed to government to prioritize the NLAB as envisaged under NDP 4. Legal aid should be prioritized as a right rather than charity, and therefore our appeal to Parliament is to fast track its legislation since it has been long overdue. I thank you so much for listening to me, and I wish you the best. I encourage all of us to understand, because it starts with us to first understand the importance of the bill, and then maybe we can be able to push the gears to ensure that this bill is passed into law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would say deal with this law, bring a number of excuses and that there is no funding. Is the law posing a threat to the legal practice? Or what is that is probably hiding within this law that the AG comes and says this law should not be passed, not be enacted into law, and that there is no money to fund this law. I just want to understand that, because I really feel there could be something around that. Because when you made a conclusion, there are clear reasons as to why this law should be enacted. In just your analysis, what could be that hiding?
I want to talk, I'm not a legal person, so I talk from the illegal side of it. I am yet to understand how for petty issues like the phone stealing, you gave the example of that, and then the various civil issues in the community, how the legal aid services could be of help to such people, because that seems to be the majority in the community. But for me, I think the Attorney General could be giving obvious issues and obvious reasons and rejection, but the hidden one could be probably to do with the high-level issues. Like of late, we have seen the one for Dr. Kiza Besige. One of the lawyers was arrested from the court-martial and thrown in. I don't know up to now where the case lies. And then I think of late, the lawyers of Dr. Besige also walked away because they are not being listened to. And then for us, we are here pursuing this when government is the one also taking these advocates and putting them in. I don't see how this is going to work in the state of, let me call it anarchy, that we have in Uganda right now, because the segregation of these different organs of government is not there. The judiciary is just acting there, and they act on powers above them. There's nothing independent that the judiciary comes with. The judiciary only plays the role of writing it in the language of the judiciary, but the ruling comes from the other organs of the state. So it is like we are almost trying to fight a war that we are not going to win.
Thank you so much. What remains in this room?
You know, there is this proverb that if your mother is the one in the kitchen, you can afford to play fair. You will find the food. So I am happy to announce that the moderator and vice president is my grandmother. I think I can talk as slowly as I want. Thank you, Council, in-house Council, for LASPNet, Mr. Kayanja, for a very incisive presentation in a very ununderstandable language, legalese. But I picked a few things that I want to pronounce myself on as I understand them illegally. Like my friend has threatened me there, that when you don't speak from the other side, you speak from this one. Yes, it sounded so beautiful that legal aid is a human right. I wanted to jump and hug the presenter. But also, we are always brutally reminded that our not knowing what the dynamics of the law are actually makes us more guilty. The not knowing already makes you guilty. So in my language we say, obutamanya tebukujjisako musango. Yet, as a clan and cultural elder, I'm so sorry to be representing that side more than the office of the Supreme Mufti, which also has its Sharia side of it, Sharia and Legal Affairs Department. But within the cultural context, we have legal approaches to resolving cultural situations. We have clan courts that deal with all different kinds of things. Yet when institutions and organizations like MCJL, LASPNet, FIDA, that deal in all that, these are the last spaces you interact with, and yet they are the ones that produce the situations you deal with. So I'm politely and humbly asking that we do a restudy of our own cultural situations to see how we can work with the cultural judges in the Fumbe clan, in the Civet Cat clan. When the Kabaka of Uganda makes a ruling and you're unhappy with it, there is a word you say, you send Aid the Mamfu, and then he say, oh, you're not happy? He sends you to another cultural space to go and get an alternate hearing on that. So even the Kabaka's word may not necessarily be the last word. But when we are learning our law, teaching our law, I don't know, I haven't attended law class. I don't know whether we also go deep into the Kachoke, Madid spaces and the other spaces to see how justice is dispensed and how issues are resolved. So the recommendation I am making is that we also invest in identifying the custodians of justice within the cultural spaces and then make them a part of our learning and growth process. Because there is nothing wrong with saying clans or cultural communities, please bring forward the judges there and we take them for training so that they understand this side of the law. You will make more mileage if the cultural people are also learning your thing and then taking it to their people. That's what I can contribute for now. Thank you very much.
My concern with the bill, not really the bill, I just wanted to share is it a concern, a recommendation, one of those two, a worry that I have that I don't think many Ugandans, and like many other laws anyway, we really recognize the importance of this bill or what this bill is trying to help us Ugandans with. He gave an example of perhaps offenses that are far away from you, but many of you might have seen during COVID-19 when they kept arresting hawkers of matoke, of mangoes, or fruits generally, after they've been selling past curfew time. Petty offenses, being a nuisance. And I just wanted to emphasize that a lot of these offenses are offenses that may never get committed by an elite Ugandan, a middle-class Ugandan. Rarely will I get arrested for being a nuisance. You get, because you will look like you're dressed to be where you're meant to be. You get, but there are so many Ugandans, by virtue of their jobs, by virtue of how they dress as they look for money, that he or she will be at risk of getting arrested. There are very few occasions when regular Ugandans have access to lawyers. And yet, like he has mentioned, our current system only provides you a free lawyer when it's a capital offense. If you've been to Luzira before, you will notice that sometimes you go to visit one person and there's actually one trying to get a phone call and he's on remand, but he's trying to get a phone call to alert his people that I'm in Luzira. I just wanted to paint that picture to show you that if we had government-supported, government-funded legal aid, then Ugandans would not need a number of leads from FIDA or so and so from Justice to be, to do these things. It means it would be automatic that everyone sort of has access to a lawyer who is affordable. Because right now we know a lawyer showing up to Luzira to help you, how much that means. Not so many families in this country can really afford a lawyer. Each time they leave their desk, they need money for fuel. But like he has said, we are operating with very minimum budget. And I don't think many Ugandans are concerned about what's happening in the civil society space, whether we have dwindling resources. So I think the role for all of us here is to take this message to a regular Ugandan to understand what the legal aid bill, the opportunity it presents us as a person who can get arrested any day for anything. You can get arrested in a land wrangle. I've seen instances you buy land, you later find it's for Mugaga, they come and evict you. And you don't have money to do that. So I just hope that each one of us in this room can go back to appraise Ugandans to be more concerned. Because, whenever it's legal things, it kind of feels like it's for those lawyers. I've never been arrested for an offense until one day you are. Anyway.
I want to borrow the words of my senior colleague Collins that when you are presenting and bringing it clear that this is a human right, at one point we had a sharing as a family, and we had a discussion that in the event any of us gets involved in any problem currently and you are arrested, who will be helping the other? And we were looking around, we had no legal person around, and I think this really gives us, it gives me hope that I pray that this thing is pushed, because there are so many Ugandans. I think, for me, I appreciated the level that we could even think that way as a family. But I know there are people, like you put it clear, that who really do not know completely whether they need these services until you are in a problem. Thank you so much.
My brother, who referred to his reaction as an illegal reaction, he gave me a very loaded one, to which I don't know how to respond, when he asked that are there threats that exist to the AG and they motivate him to prolong the process. Off the record, and the reality of the matter is yes. Of course, you understand and realize that they are quite... There was a time, I think in 2021, where I think that's when we had the NUP being very sound. And I remember during that time, my boss was always on TV making these reactions about the climate and the environment and everything. Then at that time, at last minute, we had a rapid response scheme where we would offer legal services through our rapid response lawyers from the different institutions to offer legal rapid response to those that have been arrested. It was quite unfortunate that I think majority of those that we supported were NUP people, because in any case they're the ones who were in custody. Yeah, and around that time, I remember us being misinterpreted as if we are working for political institutions. And I remember the kind of room that was created around that. So, the reality of the matter, of course, these are things that are not said, but they are visible behind the curtains, that there are fears that maybe if this legal aid scheme is put to play, then government might indirectly be funding its own enemies, or the ruling government, let me to say so. And also remember, there have been, the current regime wants funding, but acts like they don't want funding. You get what I'm saying? The president has on very many occasions been seen saying, those whites and blah, blah, blah. We don't want their money. We can stand on our own. But then later you see him appreciating UNODC for rolling out a project on and funding projects on, and quite a number of projects that are handled by the government, but they are funded by external funders. So the reality of the matter is there is some bit of twist, and among very many things that I will not say, at least those ones that I've said, I said them without fear of contradiction, and I would defend myself. But there are very many others which I know you've all heard. You just want to hear me saying it on the microphone. But I will not say, I will not fall for that trap. So, but the answer, roughly, is a yes and a no, probably. But reasonably saying, there are quite a number of donors who expressed willingness, because the major question has been that government cannot fund. But ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about 47.9 billion annually. If you participated in the reading of the national budget, you saw where government priorities are. So for me, I think, which I know many of you would agree with me, that issues of legal aid and providing of legal services are not so much of government priorities. And not only in political persecutions, as you may name it, but I'll give an example of March to Parliament. Many of those Ugandans who were participating in those demonstrations and they were arrested, you can imagine many of them didn't even have maybe plans of legal representation. So imagine the fire that they would have in their chests if they knew, yes, you will arrest me, but I'll have a lawyer who will come and defend me. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. So many of these cases, I know you've worked in the institutions where you work, there are so many cases that we handle. You look at the charge, this one has been charged of nuisance, but if you read into the room, these are political matters. Yes. So I guess that could be a reason, but maybe it could be another discussion that is off the record. Then someone asked a question on how legal services would be of help to petty offenders. Actually, petty offenders are the major reason as to why we are fighting for the enactment of the National Legal Aid Law. Because as a practicing advocate, I know that many of these petty offenders, like I said, can't afford a lawyer, that's one. But also two, they contribute to the biggest majority in prisons. Three, many of them have been framed. Or maybe we can put into play the presumption of innocence. There is a case that I handled where, like my sister said, someone comfortably went and bought land, and after a week they arrested him for trespass to land. You get what I'm saying? So, because of those small issues that arise, it's actually among those reasons that we are pushing for the enactment of the legal aid law, and in actual sense it will majorly support the petty offenders, because we have lawyers on state brief who support those capital offenders. And then there was a question on the independence of the judiciary, and that sometimes rulings come from above and then they follow through down. I think for me, I don't want to so much digress into that, but that happens in circumstances of actually people who can afford legal services. Are you getting what I'm saying? Me, I'm looking at the ordinary Ugandan, the lady that I buy from chips when I'm going back home in the evening. That's the person I'm talking about. At what point will the president be interested in her case? You get what I'm saying? I'm talking about my border guy. Yes? Who will ride me on credit for a week. I want him to be defended such that the next time I want me to be ridden on credit, I'll find him there. So it's very unlikely that the head of state would be interested in his issues. So aside from the politically motivated factors, I don't want to comment on the issues of independence of the judiciary, because those are not also within things I would wish to talk about. But maybe that's also a discussion that we can have another day. Integration of cultural justice and formal justice. And Haji emphasized that we need to invest in identifying the custodians of cultural justice. I think with the new dispensation and how courts are operating lately, there are so much, because the land chief justice, Owinyi Dolo, is so much interested actually in that cultural justice. He keeps emphasizing the Matoput, and that we've had quite a number of cases, though majorly those cases are civil cases, and we don't so much pay attention to them, or because they don't so much come into the media, but there are so many cases that have been referred to cultural years. Recently there was a case where the Honorable Justice Musa Sekana referred a case to Koti ya Kisekwa. I know you've heard of that case. Yes. So lately it's something that they're adopting and at least ensuring that the interpretation of culture is used to administer justice. Yes, and it's being put into play. Actually, also lately, cultural leaders are also so much being brought on board to help in situations of, let's say, land problems. Personally, I participated in a case of a famous pastor. I'm among the lawyers of that famous pastor. I know you've heard of that case where there was a land issue with that pastor. I think he bought land from someone who had acquired letters of administration. Long story short. But apparently there were two people with similar names, Anabukirwa. And there is no way court would have reached to an understanding of what that case is all about if it was not by the sitting of the clan leaders. And when that matter was referred to for mediation before the Honorable Justice retired Remy Kasule, he referred that case to the cultural leaders to help in identifying that lacuna that was existing. Who is Anabukirwa of Katale? Who is Anabukirwa of Nabingo? You get what I'm saying? So that is something maybe to give you a ray of hope that courts are taking seriously nowadays, because they have come to a realization that you may not properly administer justice while excluding culture. Then lastly, someone mentioned the issue of encouraging Ugandans to recognize the importance of the National Legal Aid Bill. The reality is, there are even people in this room who don't really understand the importance of the National Legal Aid Bill. Maybe you just hear about it, National Legal Aid Bill, and maybe you think of it like any other thing. But the reality is, you know, if people would not get into actually, when I was in law school, my lecturer told me, our lecturer told us that you are going to study for 5 years for majorly one reason. Human beings are unpredictable. Anything can happen tomorrow. Are we together? So in other words, if human beings are in order, lawyers would not have jobs. Neither would policemen. Are we together? So maybe as a by the way, we are talking of shrinking civic space. If you don't want civic space to shrink, advocate for the enactment of the Legal Aid Bill. Because its purpose cuts so much into the role that civil society organizations play. Imagine if FIDA had a basket fund from government, how much they would support the women in this country without having to beg donors. Then the project is for 3 years, then it is on hold, then you have to write another proposal which will take 1.5 years. So then what happens to these cases that you've been handling? What happens to them during that 1.5 years? What happens to the clients that want assistance within that time? Are we together? Thank you so much.
I'm a senior priest and religious leader and senior citizen in this country, and most of you are my grandchildren, not even my children, because I haven't seen any gray-haired person here, because most of you are gray, very few, but also they are my brothers, okay, not my sons, because if you are 70, that is the life expectancy for us who are Christians of the Bible. And if you go beyond that, then it's struggle for life. And you call it bonus, but it is not an easy bonus. Now, this was an ambush. First of all, I want to apologize that I would have made a PowerPoint presentation, picking key highlights as far as this so-called bill, regulation, policy is concerned, because at the end of the day you're going to see what this is all about. You see, people in Uganda don't read, and they just only rely on hearsay. I don't think I'm part of that group, because I read and write. If you read newspapers, actually, especially New Vision, I do a lot of write-ups. Must have seen my face there many times. So you can't read. First of all, you can't write and publish if you are not a reader. You have to read, and then that's when you can publish. So, but Ugandans don't read. They actually rely on radios, televisions, and sometimes, of course, just pick the highlights as far as the paper is concerned, and then after you have read what the media uses, because media, its profession is actually to use catchwords. You have to use a catchword to arrest or to capture attention of people, because on the heading going, Museveni is dead, and everyone will buy that. But at the end of the day, as you read, you find Museveni is still alive. But of course, the media people, and yet to me, as far as a senior citizen, there are only two institutions in this country, or two dockets, that are relevant as far as society development is concerned. The first one is the media. The second one is the religious institution. What is the purpose of the media? Media are meant to inform society, so that if society is not informed of certain things, the way they are moving, political, social, and economic, it informs them so that they can be able, to move in the right direction. But I think it's different, and I don't blame them. It's maybe the nature of their professional training that drives them to normally depict negatives and project them. Some of them are very provocative, of course, and some of them end up not informing society, but they cause what I may call strategic paralysis in society. I am sorry if you are media, you know that, but that's the reason even why we're in society. We have to learn many things, and ideas are not a monopoly of one person. But the religious institution is, so the media is supposed to inform society, and religious institution or a religious leader is supposed to transform the mindset of society or of people. So the other one does transformation, another one does information. And to me, once people are informed and transformed, then you have a better society. Because I think the society we live in, between me and you, is not informed, this country. And at the same time, it is not transformed. Now, the educational system that most of you have passed through, maybe my brother there who is a gray-haired man, I don't know even what kind of system he passed through. If you are a product of your neighbor in this country, and I'm sorry, please, I beg to be pardoned, if you know you are a product of your neighbor, this is a body that has been compromised and has compromised educational system in this country. So there is no freedom of thought in as far as you people are concerned. In fact, I salute you to pass through that system, and you are able to, because this is a system that examines what I may call mass-produced education, where people are put in one room like you are here, and they are given history, geography, and you consume that and you regurgitate it at the end of the day. And to me, that is why our society is backward. And when you talk of unemployment, there is no way you can be employed. First of all, there is no government in the whole world that employs all its citizens. What the government does is to empower its citizens with skills so that they can be able to employ themselves. And that's the career. So with the educational system, if you are empowered through apprenticeships, if you know what is an apprenticeship, through projects, through technologies, right from nursery, by the way. That's what you see when you go in this first country, even when you talk of China, and these guys who don't study history, geography, to pass all the 17 subjects, and you want to do medicine, you do geography, you do Vasco da Gama, you do it. Very useless. You want to do engineering, then you have to pass, because if you don't pass, you will not go to Makerere. You see. And so you see, and yet Makerere is not an end in itself. That's the problem, you see. Even passing through Makerere, you end up on the street. Even when you have a first-class degree. Personally, me, I did Cambridge exam. So those ones were coming by air. So there was no cheat. Where do you get cheating in that? But for you guys here, who sets exams? Your teachers. And who examines? Your teachers. If you are not aware. At the end of the day, it is the teacher examining himself. Because they know the sets. You see, UNEB establishes what we call examination bank. You know that? So they retrieve sets. Set Y, set X. So in this year, if the set Y was, these teachers know that they have never brought on board set Y in mathematics. So what they do you. Pass through those question, answer, even the way you should approach the question. And at the end of the day, when you open the paper, you see all you have done, and you answer, and then you get 100 out. St. Mary's College attend 100 out. How can all people get division 1? That is no education, I'm telling you. People have to pass exams, others have to fail. But failing an examination is not an end in itself, because success is the ability to move from one failure to another without losing courage. I end there and I start my subject. But that is food for thought. So if I say ably that our country is not informed, the information it comes from education, the kind of educational system that I think we need to mass customize, so that you allow children to study depending on their interests, their dreams, their aspirations, their background, where they are coming from. Not studying things from. So I have been following the Educational Review Commission that was put in place to review, but they came up with a report, and it's almost a vicious cycle, you see. So in 2015, just briefly, and I'm going to be very brief, in June, in his own wisdom, the president of the country, called Uganda, directed, actually, of course guided by the Constitution of Uganda, directed that a department be put in place as a home for religious affairs in this country. Now, during the time of Idi Amin, those of you who know history, that was 1971 to 1979, there was a fully fledged ministry of religious affairs placed in the office of the president. But of course, Idi Amin used it to make decrees, and that ministry was operating along his decrees. Do this, don't do this. Do this as far as religious bodies and institutions were concerned. So from 1979 to 2015, there has not been anybody or any docket responsible for religious operations and activities in the country, because it has to be there whether you like it or not. And at the same time, government made a mistake of putting Article 29 in the Ugandan Constitution, which reads, of course, freedom of worship, freedom of expression. Now, in that article, Article 29, Clause C, which allows freedom of worship, as you read it at the end, it says, the way when you are worshiping, it must be consistent. How many of you are lawyers here? Put up your hand if you are a lawyer. It must be consistent within the law. You read it if you read your constitution. Now, do you know what that means? When you say that the freedom of worship must be consistent within the law, that means it is not free. In other words, the law has to come in and control whether you like it or not. But you see, people don't read and interpret the clauses in the Constitution, which is the law of the land. But at the same time, government did not put in place a mechanism of how this freedom should be exercised. Hence, the abuse of freedom of worship by many religious and faith organizations in this country. As much as you are young, some of you may be in those organizations, or you may be seeing what is happening under the sun on planet Earth as far as this country is concerned. There's a lot of abuse in the name of exploitation, in the name of manipulation, and it's not only in Uganda alone, but in the entire world. The world is mad, using the platform of religion to do anything, even killing. I'm telling you, in the name of religion. Because the other day, Chiwetere, who was a Catholic in Kanungu, killed in the name of religion, didn't he? He did. You know it. You have forgotten. The year 2000, all of you were born. Putting people in just under one roof And he says that the world has come to the end and the world is still there. And the people were all, and government, you see, why government, I'm blaming it. And even when that thing happened, government has never come up with a report to tell us how many people died during that inferno. If Chiwetere is still alive, we are only hearing that as history. But there can be a repeat of that and many others. The other day in Serere, those of you who are from Soro, Eastern Uganda, people are told to sell their property to go to Ethiopia. Ethiopia, that is where your homeland is. It is your burial ground. It is your... Can you imagine? And I'm telling you, people sold. I'm the director for religious affairs in this country, if you are not aware. There's nothing that I don't know. Because I've done a database for your own information. You need to come to my office. We have established a database for all religious and faith organizations in this country. So we know who is who. Even when UBOS does census, we compare notes. Because sometimes they do assumptions. They rely on many assumptions. So for us, we developed a questionnaire, and we had to go around right from the sub-parish, last person. In fact, it's an ongoing, because it's a database, it's not a one-off project. It is a continuous thing. So, but what I'm telling you is that up to now, people are using religion to manipulate others. If you go to South Africa, it is worse. Rwanda here, Kagame has closed so many churches, you know it, very many. In fact, I keep telling most of the pastors I meet, you don't want this policy. So you want the government, because they are relying behind Museveni, President Museveni. President Museveni is a very good politician. He doesn't want to interfere with his electorate, with his voters. But tomorrow he's leaving, the old man, whether you like it or not. And you Bazukuru, he calls Bazuku. I'm going to one person. You think Museveni is a machine? He's going to leave. Just give him time. He's going to, whether he likes it or not. And now tomorrow when he comes, like Kagame, and he closes. I mean, during the time of Idi Amin, churches were burnt. If you're not aware, completely. They were burnt in the 70s. So, what can help protect that is having a framework where government and religious bodies sit together on one table and come up with a framework that enhances collaboration and partnership between government and religious institutions. So what is my take as far as the religious body is concerned in this country? What is my take as far as the national cake is concerned? What is my take as far as government? So you do what we call a stakeholders analysis. What do you expect from government, you religious institutions? And what does government expect from you as religious bodies? You see, stakeholder analysis. But if you don't do that, and I think I blame, I'm a senior priest, even myself, because we've been seated just, and you will see as I present, and good enough, Hamida, I've given her the soft copy, she has it, so you are going to get a copy since you are still here. But, so Hamida, let's go straight to executive summary. I want us to do the executive summary first. We read the whole, it's just about 2 pages. And then from there, I pick some key areas. I'm not going to read the whole policy. It's big. It's not even a policy. Listen, it is a draft. In other words, it's a working document. For 8 years, do you know that we started this in 2016? And don't blame us what we have been doing. Why? Dissenting views. I repeat, dissenting views. If you have your WhatsApp, give it to me. And I share with you what Bujingo, your neighbor here, has been saying about this policy. Fire! 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 Cussing it and he doesn't even know, he has not even taken time to read what is. But once he hears there's a policy, take a rija, mu Uganda, take a rwachirija, yija kukola chi at this time. Because you see, if there is an institution that fears change, it is a religious institution. Did you know that? Because once there is change, they use, what is this change for? Why? Because for them, I am a priest. It is as it was in the beginning, world without end. Even the most Islamic faith, even the way they know things, that's how they should be. And yet society is not static. Did you know that? Society is progressive. It moves with time. Things have to change. And actually for the good, even to protect the institutions. So I want us to read together the executive summary. That gives you the background. Uganda is a nation richly endowed with religious diversity. That one view. Where Christianity, Islam, traditional belief, and other faith traditions coexist and significantly shape the cultural, social, and political life of the nation. Religious, now why we are calling it religious and faith? Because some religious bodies don't want to be called faith-based. Others don't want to be called religious. You got the Pentecostals, you call it religious, they say, no, we are not religious. I'm telling you the truth. It is a serious issue. You better sympathize with me. Huh? It is serious. They will say we are not religious. Now what are you? And a faith-based is not necessarily a church. Did you know that? A faith-based can be a church, it can be a mosque, but at the same time it can be a school, it can be a hospital, isn't it? Yes, it can be a university, it can be an NGO. Oh, Wanang. So for them, now therefore, so what we did, we said now, how do we coin now to bring all these? Because you see, Uganda is notoriously, you can quote me, my sons and daughters, sorry to call you sons, my brothers and sisters. Uganda is notoriously religious. Everyone is a religious person. Did you know that? I don't think we have an atheist in this country who doesn't believe in God. Even if he doesn't believe in Christianity and Islam, but he believes in a supernatural power, isn't it? So, religion, that's why we coined the word so that it is inclusive. Some which are religious. Those which are faith. So we said religious and faith organizations. So it's just us coining it. It doesn't exist. You have to coin so that you can bring relevance, so that you can have an inclusive. So the religious and faith have historically played and continue to play critical role in education, health care, moral formation, social justice, which you are in you. I've heard you are in social justice. And that one, I think, is there any question on that? Very correct. You agree. Most institutions, schools, universities, hospitals are religious founded, isn't it? Although you have abdicated some of them. Your responsibility. And you've left it to government. And when you leave it to government, rots. So despite their centrality, the country has lacked a coherent, now this is very important, take note of this. Despite their centrality, the country has lacked a coherent and inclusive national policy to guide the regulation, the coordination, and strategic engagement of RFOs. So when we got the directive from the president to start a home, whose mandate was coordinate and monitor religious activities and operations in the country and report the government. Then we said, wait a minute, how do you coordinate this huge constituency? The Pentecostals and born again, you can't count them. And even the Muslims, you know them very much in Chibuli and Old Kampala. You know, I've been with them, the shape. When you go to Chibuli, they have their own mufuti. When you go to Old Kampala, they don't want, they can't sit on the same table. Very fierce rivals at cross purposes. And they are Ugandans, all of them. I don't know if what I'm talking is true. Yes. That is the reason why it is like that. Freedom of worship. I have the freedom of worship. Then the Anglicans did. And people now use even pulpits to attack one another. You stand on to preach, you are attacking. So you see, I am saying that in response, of course, this gap has led to fragmentation in registration, which you people were talking, and you are going to learn today the issue of registration, both for marriages and your churches or mosques. There is no church, no mosque that is registered in this country. Quote me. I am telling you, And if you want to disagree with me and give me information, I am here to listen to it. You will be educating me. But as far as I'm concerned, through my thorough, in-depth research, no mosque in this country. Imagine, since the Muslims were the first people, by the way, to occupy space in this country, 1944. Then the Anglicans and, 1844. In the 1840s, Muslims were here. The Anglicans was 1877 and the Catholics and whatever. But you Muslims who are here, you refused to occupy the bigger space. You are still very minority. I don't know what happened to you. Because you are the first people to come to this land. And you know what? How many of you have studied history in A-level and you have studied a man called Napoleon? So Napoleon said, the objective of war is victory. The objective of victory is occupation. So sometimes you become victorious, but you have not occupied space. And you remain there with your victory singing, but you have not occupied space. That is why these religious people, when they came to your country called Uganda, you see, you had your own ancestors who were not Muslims, who were not Catholics, who were not Anglicans. So you see, the Catholics, they took space in Rubaga. The Anglicans, they took space in Namirembe. Then the Muslims took space in Chubuli. So they divided themselves along, but that's Kampala. And of course, as you know, Uganda is named after Buganda. And you Baganda who are here, you also you fail to occupy space. Because Uganda belongs to you. I am sorry, this is historical. This Bazungu in 1926 is when they drew this map which you draw in your primary, and your geography teacher gives you a tick that you know how to draw the map of Uganda. As if, imagine 1926 telling you, and they tell you Uganda starts from the north in Karamoja and from, who tells these guys? People were there living. That's when they just squeeze you and then they call it Uganda, named after Buganda. Nebaja call it a B. Katonda wake. So that's why I always tell Buganda, my colleagues, my friends, that you people, you should claim this country, it's yours. Then the rest should go back to their homelands. I am telling you. I am sorry, sometimes I become provocative like the media. So, but you know that is, I'm trying to energize you, isn't it? Intellectual energizing. I'm energizing you. And I think a good teacher energizes students. Did you know that? So this gap has led to that, as I said, and that's very important. You read on your own. So in response to that, the government of Uganda, through the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, imagine 2016, we've been, just a mere draft, it is still a draft. Why? We've gone the north, we've gone east. Because people like Vujingo, people like Serwada, when you hear about the policy, they, policy tugenda kuwa Museveni Kaluru. Imagine. Can you imagine? They are now saying they are not going to vote Museveni because we are coming up with a policy. Imagine. What kind of justification is that? The man called Kayanja, whom you know, Miracle Center churches, brings together all 500 pastors, put them in Ulgogo, invites President Museveni. He goes there. You know this Lokodo? You know Lokodo, former Minister of Ethics and Integrity, who passed on. May his soul rest in eternal peace. This Lokodo is coming up with a bill. And this bill says that whoever is going to be a leader in the church must have a degree, must be trained, must be a graduate. And then President Museveni, in his own flamboyant political way, he stands and tells them, no, I disagree with that one. Because even Jesus himself, when he called the disciples, they were not graduates. But Kayanja, poor him, would have told the politician that Jesus spent, those of you who are Christians, 3 years with his disciples. And that was, you spent 3 years at the university. And at the end of the day, there was what we call a Great Commission. Great Commission. A Great Commission was a graduation ceremony. Go ye into the world, baptize, teach. That was a graduation ceremony. So the man trained them. You can laugh, but it's very true. But secondly, let me ask you. Yeah, I know I'm energizing you. Who needs professionals who are trained more? Is it the government or the church or mosque? I'm asking you. Is it the government that should force churches or mosques to have people who are trained to be their leaders? It's you who need them more. Because if they are not trained, they will not match with the times. The times will leave them. They will be preaching to people who are educated and they won't speak the same language. You want to give illustrations that these children understand. The Hamidas will challenge you when you are teaching them. Salat, Saum, Zakat, you are talking of Saum. But you see, you have to bring home Zakat and Saum and Salat. You have to bring them home. In other words, you have to tailor it to suit as much as the Quran or the Islamic faith has fundamentals that are basic, that cut across. You know, I did Islam and I got a distinction. I beat all the Muslim students. Moreover, in a master's class. I'm telling you the truth, I'm not boasting. Because I was doing my master's and of course my paper was comparative religion, and I defeated the Muslims in my class. So I know Islam as a religion of peace, those who are Muslims. So people, when they say that Islam is for killing, that I disagree with it. Actually, Mahatma Gandhi, who was a Hindu, said that Christianity would have been the best religion if it were not for these Christians. And so Islam would have been the best religion as far as I'm concerned, because Islam means peace, if it were not for these Muslims. So it is the Muslims making Islam bad, and it is Christians who are making Christianity bad, not Christianity or Islam. Are we together there? Haji, am I speaking the truth or no? Salam alaikum. So, in response, the government came up with a draft policy called the National Policy on Religious and Faith Organizations. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. Move, Hamida. So the policy seeks to harmonize Uganda's religious governance with relevant international commitments, including Universal Declaration of Human Rights, African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which uphold freedom of conscience, belief, and worship as inviolable rights. The goal of this policy is to enhance accountable leadership within religious and faith organizations while establishing a framework that promotes effective service delivery. The goal is that one, you see. Proceed now. Policy objectives. What are the policy objectives? 4 only for this policy you hear. 1, promote a culture of transparency and accountability. And don't write, you're going to get this copy. You're going to get it. Just only listen and take notes maybe where you want to ask. Promote a culture of transparency and accountability. 2, facilitate collaboration for national development. Why should we use UPDF to distribute NADS seeds instead of using church or mosque structures? Because the people who are religious leaders, they know their people better. They know even who is poor and who is not poor. They know who lacks seeds and who doesn't lack. But do you know why they don't use the structures of the mosques or churches? Because of trust. Government does not trust religious leaders and religious institutions. So when we develop this policy, it will put in place a mechanism how government and religious institutions can work together to promote national development, like the parish development model. You see, why don't we use the churches or mosques to implement the parish development model? What's wrong with that? As long as there is a mechanism that is in place to protect the rights of the government and the rights of the churches or mosques. So facilitate collaboration for national development. 3, promote unity and harmonious coexistence. So that people, you don't have to, all of you to be Muslims, you don't have to be Christians, you don't have to be Anglicans, you don't have to be, no. Remain where you are. Freedom of worship. But live together in peace and in harmony without killing one another, without fighting one another, without conflicting. And 4, provide for a framework of registration for all religious. Now this is what I was telling you, that there is no mosque, no church that is registered in this country. Let me tell you now, and I put there a dot on registration. The Muslims register under Companies Limited by Guarantee, and that is URSB, and that is Ministry of Constitutional Affairs. So are you a company, Hamida? Are you a company? Do you know what a company does? A company is registered to do business. So is a mosque registered to do business? Yes, there is business to a certain level, but in its entirety, as far as the mandate of the Islamic faith is concerned, is it to do economic and social business alone? What about the spiritual component? Where is it registered? Because the mandate of a mosque, the mandate of a church is more spiritual than economic and social, as much as they don't prevent it from doing social and economic work. Are we together? So between me and you, the mandate of religious institutions in this country, Haji, is not registered anywhere. Ate government ye yatuta yeka netumalawo nga ffe tuli ignoranta nga tetukimanyi. So the Muslims register under Companies Limited by Guarantee, Ministry of Constitutional Affairs. The Anglicans, the so-called Roman Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, they register under Trustees Incorporation Act, and that is the Ministry of Lands. Imagine a kanisa registered under lands. Land registers land, isn't it? It registers property. It registers your building, a title for your building or for your square mile or for your acre, isn't it? But is a church meant only to occupy space on land, or it has a mission which is evangelism, which is spiritual, bringing people closer to God and also creating harmony amongst the people in this country? So mandates, if you talk of the word mandate, if you know it, the mandate of the church is not registered in that component. And that is colonial. Why? Because when the Bazoum came here, they were not interested in the mandate of the church. They were interested in land, in occupying space. Napoleon. Objective of victory, occupation. So therefore, if I occupy space, I have to register it. If I don't register it, it won't belong to me. For purposes of ownership, it must be registered in my names. And that is why churches, the Anglican, where I belong, and by the way, former peers, if you are not aware. The instrument that I kept in my office registered my church under the trustees. Do you know what who are trustees? Trustees are bishops. Incumbent, not even retired. So if the bishop decides to sell all Namirembe land, I get no, because it is under his control, registered in trust. Are we getting the point? Colonial, because the Wazungu wanted, because wherever they occupied space, they have to register it in the. So once the trustees, the leaders, in other words. So the people who are Christians and who are owners, they are just at the periphery. You are just onlookers. Muture, muimke. Close your eyes, open your eyes, you are like that. And that's how we have been, by the way, whether you like it or not. Educated or not educated in this country. Now, these new movements, the Bujingos, the Serwadas, the Burwere, which you know them, the Kayanjas, the born again, and you know it is growing fast. Population now is beating Muslims. Did you know that? In the last census, 2024, the Pentecostals and born agains are beating Muslims. In numbers. Where are they getting the people? Anglicans, Catholics. Growing. Actually, I want to salute Muslims as much as you are not many, but you are very few Pentecostals. There are very few people who have gone to those. I'm not saying Pentecostals are bad churches. No. because they are led by the Holy Spirit. But they register under the NGO board. Imagine, as NGOs. Hamida, is this an NGO, yours, or it is an FBO? Yours is an NGO. So, you qualify to register under NGO board. But does a church, is a church an NGO? The NGO, by definition, has its own work. Social, economic. It fills the gaps of what government leaves behind. But the church is an institution which is meant, whose mission is evangelism, which is very spiritual. So it's not registered anywhere. So we are saying in number 4, one of the key objectives, that we need to streamline, that's the right word, streamline the registration of religious and faith organizations. What are you going to do? You bring a desk like this one, either under Uganda Registration Services Bureau or NIRA, which now is registering, and then from there, this desk is purely for spiritual activities. In any case, the NGO policy of 2010 threw away the church's registration. As you will be seeing, actually in 2010, the NGO policy on page 11, it says that faith-based organizations that have obliged to register under the NGO policy will no longer fall under the ambit of this policy until government comes up with a separate framework to register spiritual activities. Full stop, end of quote. Verbatim. That has not been honored until government comes up with a separate framework to register spiritual activities. If you want to register a church now in Uganda, there is no body, no institution, no MDA that will give you a recommendation. Where will it get the mandate? Unless this policy comes into force. Because the policy here will protect the churches so that you have a body that recommends you to go and register a mosque or to go on. Otherwise, you will be registering as a company limited by guarantee. But anyway, if you are allowed, or as an NGO. So what are the policy outcomes? Go ahead. Enhance public trust in religious and faith through improved accountability and integrity mechanism. Formal registration and recognition of all RFOs under a unified framework. Increased interfaith collaboration in peace building and conflict resolution and service delivery. Stronger partnerships between RFOs and state actors for the realization of Vision 2040, NDP3 goals, etc. Reduced incidences of religious exploitation and extremism through effective monitoring. Those are the policy outcomes. What are the key issues that the policy is trying to deal with? As mentioned, existing policy frameworks address certain aspects of RFOs. However, significant gaps remain in addressing specific issues within this sector. The religious faith organization policy aims to bridge these gaps by focusing on areas adequately covered or only partially addressed in the current frameworks. Of course, as you know that you have frameworks in place. That is what even most of religious leaders are saying. But we already have the penal code to deal with errant pastors. But we already have the constitution. But we already have, so they are there, but they are not customized. You see, mark that. Those are general laws and policies. We need to have our own. That is why it must be religious or faith, our own. This is not a government ploy to stifle or to muzzle religious institution. No. If anything, I am a religious person. I cannot support a policy that will actually destroy my church. No way. I will not die a director of religious affairs. No. I am going to die a priest at my deathbed. Buried as a priest, not as a director. So I have to protect the interests of my faith. This is actually to put our house in order. And some of these strings that are attached to our faith have colonial bearing, as old as most of you. So as I really said, strengthening partnership between government and RFOs. See, that now is when you mention key policy issues, there is a huge package. So when you talk of strength in partnership between government, what does it entail? You see, so you have to break down this into smaller units, because every key issue here you unpackage it in the policy when it comes to implementation. Because what does partnership entail? What are the areas of partnership between government and the churches or religious institutions? Establishing a framework for registration to enhance conducive operations, ensuring transparency and accountability, so that even when churches, now the other day you were reading in the papers, when we were in the north, they were saying that the government is coming to tax offertory and tithing. Not true. For what now, really? This accountability and transparency is not limited to finances. No. You have to be accountable in what you are doing. You as a leader. What you say, you account for what you are saying. Accountability, many people when you talk of accountability and trust, they rush to money. Accountability is not limited to finances. It goes beyond. And actually, most leaders have not been accountable to their parishioners, to the people they lead. Promoting unity amid diversity. You don't have to belong to one, but you need to be united for the common good. Establishing standards, yes, very important. That's why the problem is now here. What are these standards? Like, at least there must be a minimum level of education for you to be a minister to Hamida. Hamida nobo wangu yagala district card, aberenga mukuru ng'omulaba. Hamida ye Muganda, by the way. So I'm communicating. So if someone is educated, Hamida, and he becomes a district card of Kampala, is that a crime? So why should the pastors fear a minimum level of education? I am telling you, and then they go and choose before the president. What are they fearing? Because do you know why? Can I tell you, my brothers? Can I tell you something, a secret? Because people dream at night with their wives. In the morning, he starts a church. I got a vision last night. Even near a bar, even near anywhere, and you start singing songs, clapping hands, as if you cannot have an orderly place, be guided. There must be ABC on ground. You have land, you have built a church, you have, who stops you? After all, there is freedom. First of all, government cannot contradict itself. You cannot come up with a clause that gives freedom of worship and then you come and curtail it. No way. We are saying there are certain things that are not moving well that need to be corrected. So go ahead. So what are the guiding principles? One, this policy is non-discriminative. So as provided for the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, it is non-discriminative. It is a program-based approach. This policy supports self-regulation. In other words, government is not going to regulate the mosques. No way. No. Then you will be contradicting yourself. And the good news with this policy, which you are going to read the draft, there is nothing like entering into doctrines of how people worship, what they do. No. There is nothing doctrinal in the policy at all. It is only saying before you start a mosque, before you start a church, at least something must be on ground to help you. And that is for your own good, by the way. It's not for the good of the state. So, self-regulation, in other words, the internal quality assurance mechanisms must be put in place by the institutions themselves, not government. Government will not come to impose and say, this is how your pastor should behave. This one, no way. When you are preaching, face this direction. When you are, no. Even some people, when they are burying the dead, they say the head should face east. Others say the head should face. Now, that is their theology, and nobody is entering into those dogmatic, theoretical. Those are their own. The way you worship your God is purely yours. You are going to read it. There is nothing doctrinal in it. So there is no interference at all. Only that people don't read. But you see, everything has a timing. You may oppose the policy, but you see, government has always come up with policy, whether you like it or not. And not everyone has to agree with whatever policy comes out. Did you know that? Government can come with a health policy, it can come with educational policy. Some people will agree with it, others will refuse. But it doesn't mean that it will stop. Why? Because a policy comes to pass when there is a problem. If there is a problem that has been identified, and they want to solve this problem, they have to put a policy in place. And I want to tell you that there has been a problem. And you know it. You before I even tell you. So accountability and transparency, and go ahead, my daughter, proposed institution, now the rest. So, I want us to go straight, and I end, to what I have not discussed with you is the problem. What is the problem? Before we came up with this policy, first of all, we did what we call a RIA. That is a regulatory impact assessment. You cannot in Uganda come up with a policy without doing a regulatory impact assessment. So we did a regulatory impact assessment. It is the one that gives a deduction that there is a need for a policy. Or it gives a deduction that we don't need a policy in this country. The existing legal framework suffices. But we did a RIA and we found out that there was a need to have a policy. But you see, you can't tell that one Bujingo and he will even know. Much as he has 3 or 4 degrees. See, that's one problem we have in this country. And by the way, it is for protecting him. Poor him. Because a man who is able to burn Bibles and even to divorce his wife in broad daylight, and yet he's a pastor. So he has to have something to protect him. If a policy comes into force, it has to protect him. And it is very necessary. So, but he doesn't know that. He just shouts. No, you go to the problem. The problem is on page, Hamida, 12. Page 12 in your document. Page 12, you are going to see it. Page 12. Are you there, Hamida? Go. Go. No, you have jumped. It's behind. Go behind. Go behind again. Again. The problem is there. Okay. So let's read together. Article. Now listen. This is the problem statement, because that's very important. You cannot start doing a policy without defining the problem. Although Article 29 guarantees freedom of religion, the absence of a corresponding policy with an enabling framework to register and regulate state religious faith organization engagement has led to a fragmented environment. Religious and faith organizations operate under multiple non-uniform frameworks, and others remain unregistered. This lack of harmonized regulation has enabled excesses manifesting in unethical practices, exploitation and abuse, undermining public trust and safety. Furthermore, the religious and faith organizations in some cases fail to access services or deliver them because of this lacuna. The core challenges include absence of a comprehensive regulatory framework, weak accountability structures, inadequate training of religious leaders, negative foreign influences, moral decline and impunity within some RFOs. Without deliberate policy intervention, these issues will continue to erode ethical standards, society cohesion, and the credibility of genuine religious efforts in Uganda. And yet, religious institutions have played a fundamental role. You go to contributions on page 7. Page 7. Page 7. Page 7. Page 7. Page 7. There we are. Contribution of religious, this is very important, fundamental. In education, even if I don't read it. Over 12,700 educational institutions. Actually, this is where we counted to that level, but there are still more. Both primary, secondary, they have been established in this country by religious and faith institutions. So RFOs not only provide academic knowledge, but also impart morals and ethical values, helping to shape the future generations of Uganda. Very cardinal, very important. Health care. You see, approximately 600 health facilities are under the oversight of religious and faith organizations, countrywide and more, in form of hospitals, clinics, mobile health units that cater for diverse communities. Agriculture. RFOs plays a crucial role in agricultural development, integrating spiritual principles into farming practices that promotes sustainability and food security. Media that you are trying to advocate for. Beyond traditional roles, RFOs in Uganda are actively involved in media ownership, managing over 80 media houses, including radio, television stations. These platforms serve as powerful tools for disseminating information, promoting societal values, and fostering community engagement. Arbitration and marriage counseling. In matters of arbitration and marriage counseling, RFOs provide crucial services that uphold cultural traditions while ensuring fair and just resolutions. They offer mediation services that help resolve disputes within communities and promote peaceful coexistence. Social justice and advocacy, your area. RFOs are catalysts for social justice and advocacy, actively engaging in peace-building efforts, conflict resolution, socio-economic programs aimed at reducing poverty and inequality. Interfaith dialogue and reconciliation. RFOs provide interfaith dialogue and reconciliation, fostering harmony among diverse, blah, 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 name it. Even if I end there, you are going to read. Why am I bringing this? I am sharing with you that this policy documents what the religious and faith organizations have been able to do in this country. Now, fundamentally, to be able to shine like that, and then all of a sudden you come up with people who come now here to manipulate and exploit society. I think we should say as a country, enough is enough. We cannot accept to continue dying, losing life in the name of religion, property in the name of religion. We cannot accept this manipulation. I was in South Africa one time in Durban. What was the international conference all about? Regulating religious communities in Africa. That was the topic. Regulating religious in Durban in South Africa. I want to tell you that in South Africa, people are made to eat grass to prosper. Unless you eat grass like a cow or a goat, you cannot prosper. In the name of religion. So this is for us, we have our own examples. If you go to South Africa, they have their own examples, negative examples, and many other countries. So I think, how do we sort out? So can the penal code deal with such a, no. Why penal code cannot deal with that? There are certain issues where you don't have to go to the courts of law. And by the way, you don't have even a proper evidence, because if the man says that the Holy Spirit has allowed me, what evidence do you have to measure the Holy Spirit? Hey, Banang, I don't know if you're getting the point. So it's sometimes things to do with religion and faith are very hard to apply measures that can be applied on criminal cases. Like if someone is caught stealing, if someone is caught breaking into someone's home, or committing adultery with my wife, God forbid. Are we together? Here, Kafero, lwaki obuzewo? Nawo nokatofiiridwa kuwankubidde nno n'ompita wano ate novaawo n'ogenda. Ate nze omanyi nze ndi munabuddu bwe mba nga njagala kunyiiganyiiga. Fe omanyi abanabuddu tunyiiga nnyo. So, Kafero, you have to read this document and guide. But I'm happy my class is listening attentively, and they are going to read the document. And the good thing, you are still here until tomorrow. So do justice. Take time to read this document. Make your comments. Actually, we would welcome even comments if you are in disagreement. In this area, we are in disagreement we are in disagreement here. Critically, you critique it. That's what we need. Because if you don't critique it, then you are not doing justice to it. Actually, don't criticize, but critique. I think you know the difference. A good scholar critiques, but a bad one criticizes. So you critique it. See where the good things are, and then say, here it is. Welcome, idea. But where you see that this is stringent, or it comes at a time when the society is not ready for it, you point it out. That is what we did, and that's why we have spent more years. Why? The policy is very sensitive, but at the same time it is emotive. So we can't rush it. We have to consult, but between me and you, government cannot, because let me tell you, you know, ours is a directorate, it is not a ministry. Most of you call it Ministry of Ethics and Integrity. There is no Ministry of Ethics and Integrity in this country called Uganda. It is a directorate for ethics and integrity, but its uniqueness lies in the fact that it is headed by a minister and a permanent secretary, which are supposed to be in a ministry. And why is the minister heading that directorate, yet the directorate in principle must be headed by a director, is because of its mandate. The mandate of the directorate is twofold. One, rebuilding ethics and integrity in society with policies, of course, but also coordinating national efforts in the fight against corruption. So when you see the IGG, the DPP, the Auditor General, the PPDA, the URA, ISO, ESO, State House and Corruption, are we getting those? All those are under my minister. All those. She is the one who chairs what we call interagency forum, because one of its key mandates is coordinating national efforts. But the question you should be asking me, if you are coordinating national efforts in the fight against corruption, why has corruption come to stay in this country? That's what I want you to ask me. You see, are we together? That's what I want to explain, because this is a very serious matter. And by the way, one of the key areas that we want to solve with this policy is when you talk of accountability and transparency, you are talking of eliminating corruption among religious and faith organizations. It is there also, if you are not aware. Don't think that it is all well with religious institutions, that embezzling of funds is only in government alone. No, you are just kidding. Then you don't know. Actually, government, you have the IGG and the Auditor General, they are able at least to identify key big fish or small. But of course, they are dealing with broken men. That is why Frederick Douglass, a sociologist, said, and I quote, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Of course, when you say broken men, even women are there. And this government has been dealing with broken men. It has been repairing broken men. And once you repair a broken man, he breaks again. So you people wake up through this advocacy of yours, Hamida and Company Limited. I'm telling you, Hamida, don't just kid. Don't stay here to be kids. This is not a kid's stuff. Wake up and actually promote that statement of that sociologist, Frederick Douglass. It is easier to build strong children. So start. How do we build strong children? For the future, for for the future of this country. So that you don't deal with broken men in the future, whom you can repair and they break. IGG is dealing with broken men. DPP is dealing with broken men and women. It is easier to be, and that is even what Julius Nyerere, the former president of Tanzania, before he left power in 1985, I was there, by the way, listening to the TV. He said, and I quote, 1985, I have been a leader in Tanzania for the last 30 years. If I am given more 30 years, I cannot do what I have failed to do. That is what he said. But at the same time, he made a statement. Unless character be trained, character, where you have honesty, where you have integrity, unless character be trained, acquiring knowledge alone may prove injurious to society. End of quote. That is Nyerere. And you have seen the injury that the knowledge has caused in this country or elsewhere in the world. You produce engineers from Makerere University with first-class degrees. Civil engineer develop a road from Kampala to Luwero. In 2 months, the road has potholes. What has happened? You think they don't give him enough materials? He will be able to use 100 bags of cement instead of 1,000. Accountability, 1,000 bags. But what has been put there? 100, and off he moves. Integrity, character. Unless character be trained, acquiring knowledge alone may prove to be injurious to society. Those are great leaders, by the way. Those are not ordinary, those are not words from ordinary minds like us. Great leaders. So what I'm trying to tell you, my brothers and sisters, you critique this document, you're going to get it. But of course, don't criticize or don't be biased. Now, when you also do the bias, you will not do justice to it. Because whether you like it or not, the policy has to be there. Whether Bujingo likes it, whether you people like, the policy has to be there. Because government does not wake up and come up with a policy. Even, by the way, even because I know with even our leader, he doesn't want this policy. The president himself. He knows why he doesn't want it. Don't think that he's the one coming with it. No way. He's not in favor. But you see, the president is not alone. He's not an island. That's why he has technical people. That's why he has people to work for him. They have to convince him to a certain level to know there is a need for this because of it. If you make a good justification, I think he will buy in. But at the moment, he's not interested. But for us who are seeing, by the way, let me tell you, and I end here. You can quote me. Eyes that see are rare, and those that look are common. You may be looking at me, but you're not seeing me. Eyes that see are rare, and those that... So people who have eyes that see, they are very few. And those who have eyes that can look, there are very many. And people who have eyes that see are the only people who have a vision. If you talk of vision. Because the vision is the art of seeing the invisible. That's a vision. Am I communicating? Or those are semantics that are very hard for. But I can see you have educated. So I beg to move. That is the end of it all. As far as my discussion, I have not read the whole thing. But I believe those key highlights can help you to understand where we are coming from, isn't it? And where we are going. And I don't know why you needed this at this time. But also, I want Hamida and company and my brother. You and Hamida, I want 2 people from this group to attend the national validation in Hotel Africana on the 26th. So, as I leave, give me the telephone contact. We shall facilitate you. But that's not even important. What is important is that we need your views. The person, these people will come, we will read your views from this platform. We'll be allowed. So I want 2 people. And please, all God, Kafir. You will direct. Aha. Kakati nze nkusabye sebo kubanga nze nange nedira nkima. I'm telling you, fwe nkima tugiyita enkyende. Nyoni nzira enkyende. Hati shikutukwere mukutarama kafwero jangu wano nkwate mu kifuba. Fena twedira nkima sebo. Bakikube. Sebo kikube kifaananyi nze ne kafe. So get 2 people and I'm going to give you invitation because we shall have judges, we shall have members of parliament, we shall have religious leaders, heads of Chibuli, heads of Old Kampala. We have invited them all. Because if you are validating a policy, you have to invite all the stakeholders. Of course, you can't invite the whole country, you know that. We are limited by space and by time and by resources. Am I lying or wrong? But at least we must have representatives. Because if the Mufuti of Uganda, whom I have worked with by the closet for some time at a higher level, comes and sits and listens with his Secretary General of Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, ekiba nga bakiraba nti kino kirimu obuzibu bakyogererawo ate bw'aba ayogedde Haji Mufuti ne Secretary General abalala tebakkiriza naye naawe njagala views zo oziteekemu. So may the Lord bless you, and I'm happy to be called. I know I have talked a lot, but you know I'm a teacher by profession, so I have to engage you so that you don't fall asleep. So would you like to stand up? Stand up. Stand up and energize. Stand up and energize and stretch. Katukole bwetu temirundi etano tebuviri ngagenda. 1 genda wasi 2 genda wasi genda wasi genda wasi genda wasi. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Apoye.
Maybe just to end on, we are very grateful, Director, for those insightful and that good presentation. Kyotugambye okukola, we have discussed it from yesterday's call with you. Only that we didn't know the number. Now that you've given us 2 slots, we are going to discuss it after the meeting. And we promise to send you the names by end of today. Yes.
And which is in your name, because we are going to pay you
online. Yes.
No cash now.
We also do the same.
Which money?
Naffe kyetukola. Ne number.
And then if you could give me the WhatsApp, I would give you right now a soft copy of your WhatsApp right now. I have it on my instead of waiting for Amida. What you do, if you give me your WhatsApp number, I'll give you soft copies for this policy. The whole of it. Soft copies on your WhatsApp.
Amida agenda.
WhatsApp, and I send them to all of you.
Amida agenda big chikolejo. Then we are going to also send you before end of day the 2 names of the representatives.
The products of UNEB were dead on arrival. Thank you for that. I am Salongo Senoga Tamzade Al-Hajj Abdul Aziz, Principal Assistant to the Secretary General Office of the Supreme Mufti at Chibuli. I am also a Sheikh, a Haji, and a cultural elder. Now, somebody says Uganda happens to have the best laws on the statute books. I also suspect they also have the best plans unimplemented. By your own admission, your office is so many years late in doing the right thing right. I don't know what help you want or what prayers you want, but I should also say you should also come for cultural prayers so that this thing gets passed, so that we know how to align ourselves properly with our purpose and mandate, as you call it. Now, I think we have too many laws to catch up. The Bible has 10 commandments. The Quran has 5 and 6. The 5 are the pillars of Islam. The 6 are the articles of faith. And I think when you add that, you also get to about 11. I think we are complicating a simple thing in heaps of legislation. We should learn to speak, package, and present our intent with greater profoundness than noise. You say a few words that mean everything. When it comes to ethics and integrity, well, I don't know about religion, but I feel this is more of a cultural affair than a religious or political affair. And in culture, we organize very easily. We have the elders, who we call Vajaja. Sir, I hope Hamida is not stealing my fire by taking away your attention from me. We have the elders, and then we have the parents, and then we have the children. In the early morning presentation where you were not, we were saying that couples should seek and take responsibility to do what they need to do for this nation to be better. And I am responding that it is asking too much of the younger couples to seek and accept responsibility of marriage and family building when the parents do not do their bit. There are no parents anymore in the children's lives. When the elders abdicate their role, there are no longer any cultural elders or or whatever other elders. Well, they are church elders, I'm sure. But the elders, traditionally, are no longer given the opportunity to play their role. Well, when governments also turn out to be the biggest abusers of trust, then we shall end up in the hands of good Samaritans and outsiders who are pushing their own template of understanding of what works and what doesn't in marriage, whether between man and man or whatever, family, community, and eventually nation building. So we are at the mercy of the good Samaritan. Because our governments have become cannibalistic, our elders have run away from the fireplace, our parents have run into the workplace, and the children are playing in the road. Forgive me for using those very few words to say a lot of the things about how you have affected me in your presentation. I thank you very much.
Aaron, thank you for your presentation. I work for Acholi Religious Leaders Peace Initiative. We were also privileged to access the draft, and we shared with the religious leaders. One of the key things they ask, which you touch about, is the issue of corruption, which I would want you to elaborate more on that, because it is a key concern for the religious leaders, and they say is issues to do with ethics and integrity about religious leaders only. If not anything, corruption is so high in government than in any other place. And then how can the same government comes in the name of ethics and integrity on the side of the religious leaders, leaving corruption as the order of the day within the same country. They look at it as being really very unique. Secondly, already from the resistance, the various resistance you talk about, from the side of the president, you have already made it clear that there is no goodwill at the moment. And I am left wondering what would be the reason to continue to pursue this, because at the end of the day, he has to assent to this. But on the side of the religious leaders, especially the Pentecostals, has your office not done anything to explain to them so that they are able to understand what the policy is about? Because the policy, as it is very clear, and it is very good, and it is even good for the religious and faith organization. Why are they still resistant despite it looking as good as this? And then lastly, maybe if your team could also put it just like sometimes we see in calls for proposal, where they say these are the eligible, these are the ineligible. Part of the fears comes from that. There are fears to do with the taxation, there are fears to do with the revenue collection, various fears. The policy has already outlined so clearly what it aims to do and how to do them. If that bit could also be contained and say the policy will not touch things to do with the doctrines, and they are written in the policy there, it would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have one or two things that I want to inquire. First, I want to thank you, Senior, for the enlightenment that you've given to me in terms of the policy. I think I want to pick it from the point, I think at the time when you were starting, you said no church, no religion, whatever, or faith is registered. And you clearly stated the registration of the Catholic, the Anglican, the Muslims, and where the Pentecostals are. And now I just want to inquire from you. What do you make of the continued registration of the Pentecostal churches as companies limited by the URSB? Two, in the event that now there is no framework for registration of churches, where can the churches register for now for their legal operation? Then the last thing I want to inquire is, in your presentation, you made something about the contributions. I wanted to inquire that, are there proposals in line with the contributions that the policy has to help achieve the contributions that have been stated? I think as when you noted the problems that have been highlighted, I think around 3 or 4 problems, if I saw very well, or more than that. The issue of the qualification and the number of things. I want to know, does the policy provide proposals on how to go about the problems that have been identified? Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you and acknowledge that basing on the justification or rationale you've given and the problem statement, of course, that gives us a justification to understand that for sure some bit of regulation is needed when it comes to faith-based or religious organizations. But again, I was thinking about how it is going to be implemented, drawing lessons from the NGO Registration Act and how it is being implemented. According to NGO actors, the act is more of a repressive tool. So how sure are we that this is not going to be a repressive tool to religious institutions, especially those with divergent views, maybe? Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
I think what members were giving here were not necessary questions. They were making observations, comments. As I told you, like Haji, your name again? Your name again? Abdul Aziz. Like, I think Haji is, if you heard Haji's well, he was actually lamenting. And his lamentation is not a question. Because I think he dwelt more to say that elders, that parents have abdicated their responsibilities, and very true. So I don't think that they have anything to add, and I don't think even the policy will attend to what elders are supposed to do, or the parents at home, or the couples, or what. Now, that is why we say when the policy advocates for self-regulation, then it means that within the religious institutions, you people sit down and see how you can revive the work of elders amongst your people, how you can revive the work. In other words, you may find that even parents don't know their roles. And that is why there is this subject of parenting. Because the subject of parenting is not in vain. It comes at a time when the parents are there, but you are teaching them how to look after their families, how to look after their children. So I think, Haji, what you are providing was very, that's why I said your discussion was very philosophical, and it was to the point. But I think it was more of a challenge, more of a lamentation, what is happening and what is not happening in our country. Uganda has many plans, and it has so many laws, and therefore if we have many plans and have many laws that are not implemented, why do we go ahead to design other? Don't say lamentation, it's true. But you see, as I said, every policy or every law comes into force to attend to a certain specific problem. And I think at its own timing, there must be, that's why you have to define a problem, which problem definition is different from the problem definition when the Constitution of Uganda was going to be put into place as the law of the land, or when the penal code was going to be put in place. So the penal code has its, where it starts and where it ends. It has its points of concentration. The package in the penal code is different from this policy. In any case, I think if you are a policy maker or a policy policy formulation student, someone who is engaged in policy formulation, you should know that there is a very big difference between a policy and a law. Some people confuse policies and laws. They are not the same way. I'm not a lawyer, but at least I have done some reading. The policy can translate into a law if the stakeholders so need it. That for it to bite and to become more stringent, I think we need to. That is why when you design a policy, like the zero tolerance to corruption policy, then the stakeholders can say, wait a minute, we need to table this as a bill in Parliament. So it goes to Parliament as a bill, and it is discussed, and then once it is thoroughly, when they are in agreement, it translates into an act of Parliament, and that's already a law, because once it becomes an act of Parliament, it becomes a law straight. Then it goes to implementation. But I don't know if a policy can arrest someone. What is captured in the policy can take someone to court. I don't know. I think a policy, as far as I'm concerned, and I have to tell you, ideas are not a monopoly of one person. A good scholar has to accept other people's ideas, and you give your ideas, but you have to accept to allow other ideas, because there are no wholesale ideas. Ideas have to be challenged, they have to be reasoned out, and they are not a monopoly of one person. To me, I see when you come up with a policy, it is a checkpoint. It puts in place what I may call a checkpoint or checkpoints. Like you reach a roadblock and you stop. You say, wait a minute, why do you stop? Because, you see, so the way we've been doing things, the way things have been going on in the field of religion and in the field of faith in this country, are we doing the right thing? Are we following the right? But you see, when government comes up with a policy to put in place that checkpoint, then the religious leaders, because they are not the ones who have actually come up with that, they will now reason, why is government coming at this time with this? Why? What is happening? They will start asking, why? Why at this time? Because government and churches have been here for long, and religious institutions, but we have never had such a thing. Why? You see? But to me, any able and wise person in this country or elsewhere in the world must operate within the means of checkpoints. Checkpoints are very necessary in life, because it arrests your attention and attracts it and say, wait a minute, are you following the right direction? And once that checkpoint asks you that question, then you ask yourself, if you are following the right direction, you continue. If you are not following the right direction, you make an about turn, or you remain there until you sort yourself out. So I think but it's not supposed to reprimand, like the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity. When we establish the district integrity promotion forums at the districts, we don't arrest people. Arrests, and yet you identify that Kawo or RDC so and so has been able to steal such amount of money, but you don't arrest. No, because for us our work is proactive, very proactive. So we leave that to the IGG or to the DPP to come and do the needful, because that's where the mandate tells them. I look at the policy from that perspective, that this policy will put in what I may call preventive measures for such a bad happenings to come as far as religion and faith is concerned in this country, because we don't want calamities to befall upon us. And actually calamities can befall upon nations through religion. They can befall upon families through religion, calamities. And we've seen it all in the entire world. So we are saying, wait a minute, let's have a checkpoint. Are we moving in the right direction? So let's put it down in black and white, some of the guidelines that we should follow, that should help us be on the right track. So you sit down and design a package of guidelines. That is why we are consulting and consulting. On 4th, we had a pre-validation. Now 26th, we have a national. But even the national validation is not an end in itself. But we are saying, wait a minute, enough is enough. We better validate this policy. And if the stakeholders so wish that this policy, and I want you to listen to this, that this policy is relevant, it comes to pass. If they say we don't need it, it stops there, but we have done our part. At least where we have gone, between me and you, where we have gone, as I told you, there is no country or there is no policy that can be overwhelmingly accepted by all stakeholders. It's not there at all. Even your constitution of 1995, it has some loopholes, by the way, where people, which people can challenge even now. But it is your constitution, the law of the land, and we accept it and we refer to it to guide us in many ways. So what I'm trying to tell you, Elder Haji, you are very much right. Parents, elders have abdicated their responsibility. Why continue in these policies when others are here, plans are here, laws are here, unimplemented? I think, Haji, if I were you, and I think Hamida, if you are not bringing Haji, I am inviting him personally for the national validation. Because one important thing that you mentioned, Haji, which I want you to mention on the 26th, and April, is align. You see, you said, and I quote you verbatim, we need to align ourselves with our purpose. Did you say that? So if religious leaders, I mean, you are the one who said Haji. If religious leaders can sit down and say, let's align ourselves with our purpose, I'm telling you, there will be no need for a law or a policy. But I think also the religious and faith leaders have failed to a certain extent to align themselves with their purpose. Are we together? I'm part of the people to blame. And Hajj is also part, because both of us are religious leaders. But we have to lament, because even Jeremiah in the Bible lamented. After seeing the exile in Egypt was not enough, people had to go to the second exile in Babylon, and the man had to write out of lamentation. So elders have abdicated their responsibility, Haji. And the children are left to the mercy of God, Allah, I'm telling you. They are left at the mercy of God. So do we keep quiet? We need to move. I think that is why we need to move and do something. But as far as I'm concerned, this policy is not a law. But the stakeholders, Haji, I, and Yuka, and the company limited, we can decide to make it a law if we so wish, to solve certain problems, if at all problems are there that require solving. As laws are there and they have not been implemented. Actually, I was told Rwanda is implementing most of our laws. We make many policies here, they are implemented in Rwanda. For us, we don't implement them. So that's what I was told. I haven't done that research. But you are very much right. I think we need to say a few words, Haji, that mean everything. You know, I like the words. You are very them as a scholar. So, that is a message for your fellow religious leaders to me. You challenge them and tell them that, you know what? Even government would not have sat down to come up with a policy if we were following the right things, if we were working together as a team, if we were aligning ourselves with our purpose. I liked that one, Haji. So you challenge them and then call off a policy. The directorate has spent money consulting, that's not an issue. Always government spends money. And then at the end of the day, it is not even put into use. What do you make of the continued registration of Pentecostals? My brother, you asked that question under the URSB and NIRA. Where can churches register now for their legal operation? I want to tell you, and I repeat, there is no there is no desk, there is no framework that is in place to register churches today, sir. That one was. So I can't answer you. And as I rightly said, if there is any MDA, ministry, department or agency in this country that recommends any church to register, you better tell me and we arrest him. Because, so in other words, you have to continue. If we don't have a legal framework in place, sir, to protect the churches and faith or religious institutions, people will continue registering under companies limited by guarantee. Under, of course, you have to be compliant with the Companies Act. You have to be compliant with the NGO board. You know that, to register as an NGO. They have a checklist. They have a checklist. They will say, you have this, you have, before they register you. The other day, you know Grace Rebecca, Fanero, who he has so many young men, your age mates. All, by the way, all universities are in that. I'm telling you, Kafero. The graduation from Chambogo, from Makerere, from UCU is Fanero. That is where they graduate. The man has, I'm telling you, has claimed space. Very big youth. He has now got space. The government has given him big land in Naguru. But he was telling me that he spent 4 years trying to register his Fanero ministry. 4 years. Imagine. You are in your own country, you are not registering. You are not to Uganda and registering your ministry in Kenya. Or your ministry, you are registering here. And you are taking 4 years. What does that mean? Huh? Because they first put their measures. They are to find, who are you? Who is this one? You are talking of Fanero International, Ministry International. What does it deal with? What is its package for you to be accepted to register under the NGO board? How do you want to put it? Because isn't Fanero a faith? Faith. So why should a faith register under the NGO board? That is why they took 4 years for registering. But even registering after 4 years, is that really registering his mandate? If he has to preach, because Rebecca preaches. Those of you who read the Bible, you know, Paul says that some of you belong to Apollos, others belong to Cephas because of their eloquence. Not some of people belong to churches because they follow so and so. Or even mosques. I don't know mosques. So where can the churches register? Nowhere, sir. As far as I'm concerned, sir, I cannot lie to you unless you want me to lie to you. Churches cannot register anywhere now. You only will register partially under the NGO board or under the companies limited by guarantee. But there is no mechanism that is in place, no desk, no framework that is in place to. That is why we are saying we need this policy by yesterday. Because this policy, even as you see the draft, it doesn't capture that mechanism. It only identifies the problem that there is a need for, but it does not propose. Now, where did you propose? When it comes to implementation, when this policy has been approved by cabinet, then now you look at the implementation. So how do we streamline the registration? Where does the desk go? Huh? What is required for a church to register? Are you getting that? That one you can't capture it in the draft policy. No. Those are nitty-gritties that will come with time when the draft has been approved. Because you see, this is a draft working. A draft is a working document. Even at validation Hajj, it is a working document. It's not final. Because from there, once the majority agrees, like in Parliament, those of you say yes. So once the majority say we need the policy, we shall take it to cabinet with a memo. And when we take who chairs the cabinet, His Excellency the President, he may decide even now during the season now, he may decide to shelve it, and it remains there. Now, but for us, we have done our part. We have to do our part and finish. I'm telling you, because for me, I have the passion between me and you as an elder. I have the passion that we need this policy by yesterday for ABC to help, by the way, for protecting faith and religion. I'm telling you the truth. Because to me, this policy, if you are talking of enhancing collaboration, it will give you even how you can negotiate for your share as a religious institution with government. Because when you talk of enhancing collaboration, what does it entail? You see, we need to clearly sit with government and define the areas of collaboration, the areas of partnership. If it is the parish development model Haji, it has been introduced by government. Church has, the mosque has to come in and say, because these are your people, who are the beneficiaries? And they are our people. Let me ask, are they government people? They are ours. We live with them, we stay with them. We wed them, when they die, we bury them. Banange, am I lying wa mahajati? Wali ugenze kwa maka. Chali mwana mtu. So what I'm trying to tell you. Now then finally you asked about what we are doing as strategies. What are the strategies? In this document, I didn't complete it. On page 22, they are what we call actionable strategies. So you're going to read this. What are the strategies? So you have identified a problem. There are objectives. You have the outcomes. You have, so what are the strategies? And that is very important. In any policy, you have to put in place strategies. They are there. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, see? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now, you see, these are all these strategies. And they are not limited to this. And you can modify them. You see, when we talk of validation, Haji, and those of you are going to be selected, what is the purpose of national validation? Validation means ownership. In other words, when you sit and see this document, you will say, what is captured here is ours. We agree with it. Go ahead. If you disagree, nobody can impose it on you. That's what we call validation. Are we together? It is for purposes of ownership. So Kaferobike, me, I've already chosen Haji. First of all, he's a scholar. Secondly, he's an elder like me. And therefore, he's the right person to be in that forum. And actually, we called Chivulia. We gave you names, but I want to choose you separate from the other group now. So, please, I want your name just now before I leave. A number, your WhatsApp, Namanyago. I send you everything, an invitation. Tomorrow, you are receiving it before 10, so that you can come and attend. So, I don't think that the questions, if you know that what you asked my daughter, there's a daughter who asked, the questions that you asked were burning right. Some of them, you are saying, well, like I think, yes, NGO Regulation Act. No, proposals. You see, you said proposals. Those are strategies. Who asked for proposals? It's you. Yeah, but then my daughter asked what? My daughter, what did you ask? It's you.
No, she has moved out, but she was asking about the existing NGO.
Yes.
And then how isn't it going to be regressive like the NGO Act?
The existing NGO?
The NGO Act, something like that.
Yeah, but that now I'm not dealing with it myself with my policy.
She was referring
I am only saying
the policy
to
what is in place.
The policy is going to streamline, the upcoming policy is going to streamline, so that once the streamlined is, if you know the word, streamlining, in other words, it is going to create a new mechanism different from the NGO, because you see the NGO policy of 2010, it was reviewed in 2016, you know that, and the one of 2016 opened the door. Did you know that? It gave an opening, but still you are registering under the NGO board as a church or as a mosque if you are. I don't know, do mosques register under NGO board? A few of them. As a mosque or as an NGO, like you establish an NGO to do charitable work. Now those are the things we need to correct.
And can I tell you another thing you have failed to ask, the marriage issue? Both in the most Islamic faith, also in Christian faith. Do you know that our marriages are controlled by the state, whether you like it or not? And that is when you want to divorce, you have to go to the courts of law. But if the churches and the mosques had authority over their marriages, there would be no need of going to courts of law. We would sit and resolve the conflict. Either you tell them to separate. Do you know, Haji, can I tell you one scholar, an American scholar? He wrote a scholar book and it says, separation in marriage is a lesser evil. Imagine this is a Christian business. But because I read it and I saw it is very, separation in marriage is a lesser evil. It is evil, it's bad to separate. Because even those Christians, when they marry young, that which God has put together, no man should divide. You know that. But he says in the book, he's a bishop, separation in marriage is a lesser evil than intolerance in marriage. Intolerance. Listen to that. When people cannot tolerate one another hard in marriage, you would rather separate. Otherwise, if you don't, you are going to kill one another. And have you seen people killing one another in this country? You have seen them. You want me to mention names? People have killed one another because of intolerance. So they cannot tolerate one another. And I saw in your one of your keywords what you are using, Babylon Company Limited. Tolerance. So one of your yes, tolerance. Actually, there's a lot of intolerance, even between government and. So we have intolerance. If you cannot tolerate one another, you will either end up killing one another. So you would rather separate so that my daughter lives in a peaceful environment, and maybe by God's grace at a certain time you can reunite, or you can be better off when you are alone. I am a priest, I'm not supposed to say that. But you know, I am dealing with what we call life and death issues. When you are dealing with life and death issues, you have to speak. So,
Eno ye Salam TV.